Yeah. Yeah. No. So right now, I want everybody who's come to speak here tonight to speak. That is currently the plan. Okay. Okay. Sounds like we're close. It is. They didn't have it. They didn't have it yesterday. Troy said city council. Perfect. Yeah, I think that seems super. Yeah. Thank you for your patience, everyone. Looks like we're going to get going here pretty quick. Again, if you haven't filled out a comment card, you'd like to make a comment, please do so. I'm going to have to shout. This isn't what I came here for. Okay. Yeah. They came on them when they got here. I think people. Huh? I think that's the stack too. I don't think that's the filled out stack. They give them to Shannon, right? Yeah. Yeah. If you have filled out your comment card and you haven't brought them up to Shannon, please do so. That's how they get to us. So. We're good. We recording? Okay. Good evening, everyone. It is 6:39 p.m. and I am calling the September 9th, 2025 City of Pleasant Hill Planning Commission meeting to order. Please stand with us and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. One nation. May I have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Chiang,
Here.
Commissioner Colfin,
Here.
Commissioner Mascaro,
Here.
Commissioner Vavrick,
Here.
Commissioner Weber,
Here.
Commissioner Weiler. Here. Chair Field.
Okay, at this time, this is the time that we reserve for public comment on items that are not on the agenda tonight. So if you've come here to speak on item 6.1, we're going to have a time for that later. If it's on a different item, this would be the time to speak. So do we have any comment cards for the non-related items?
No.
Okay, thank you. And then now we're going to review the meeting minutes from our last meeting. So do we have a motion on that?
I would move to approve the meeting minutes from the Planning Commission June 10th, 2025 meeting.
Second.
Okay, may I have a vote, please?
Commissioner Chiang,
Yes.
Commissioner Colvin,
Yes.
Commissioner Mascaro, Commissioner Vavrick,
Yes.
Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
Commissioner Weiler,
Abstain.
Chair Field.
Yes. Okay, now we're going to move into the public hearing for the main item that we are here to talk about tonight, which is item 6.1, the comprehensive amendment to Pleasant Hill Municipal Code Title 18, Planning and Land Use, and amendment to the zoning map to include the rezoning of 1,080 parcels throughout the city for consistency with the General Plan 2040, including the 2023 housing element citywide. Do we have a staff presentation?
Yes, thank you. My name is Haley Crawford, a senior planner here with the city. I'll just briefly introduce the project. As you mentioned tonight, this is a comprehensive amendment to the Pleasant Hill Municipal Code. It also includes an amendment to the zoning map, which does include the rezoning of 1,080 parcels. Tonight, staff is seeking a recommendation from the Planning Commission to the City Council on both of those items. You may remember the Planning Commission saw the zoning ordinance update 3 times last year in June, August, and October. From there, it was then reviewed by the City Council in November of last year and then again in April of this year for study sessions as well. And it is returning now to the Planning Commission for a formal recommendation. We are continuing to work with Mintier Harnish on this effort. And so Michael Gibbons is here. He will lead us through a presentation that summarizes kind of the work as a whole and then focuses on some of the changes since the Planning Commission last saw it, and then some of the rezonings as well. So I'll turn it over to Michael. Thank you.
It's not.
You can just say next slide and I'll click it.
Actually, I think it's connected now. Perfect. Well, good evening, Chair, Planning Commissioners, and members of the public. It is an absolute pleasure to be with you this evening to provide you an update on the comprehensive zoning ordinance update and associated zoning map amendment project that the city has been working on for the last year and a half or so. This is going to be a really comprehensive overview of the update, being that this is the public review draft, kind of the final draft that we are forwarding on recommendation to the City Council. So I preface this will be a bit of a longer presentation, but here's how we plan on tackling. I'll provide just an overview just for the public's benefit of why we're doing this project, why it was necessitated. Then I'll dive into the actual text amendments for your zoning ordinance. Then I'll go over some of the zoning map amendments that we are proposing, hand it back to the Planning Commission to ask us any questions and hear public comment. And then ultimately we'll seek a recommendation to forward this on for adoption to the City Council. So before we do that though, just a quick refresher of who we are. My name is Michael Gibbons. I am a project manager for Mintier Harnish, the land use consulting team that was selected to assist the city in this project. I lead the zoning code practice and served as the zoning task lead for this specific project. I am supported by a much larger team, though, that is not here with me this evening, starting with Jim Harnish. He's our owner and principal of Mintier Harnish. Brent Gibbons, who you all likely some of the planning commissioners are familiar with, who's the overall project manager of the overall general plan project, which this project is merely a part of. And then Nikki Zanchetta, who was the project planner, provided day-to-day support. Now, our firm has extensive local government experience working with development codes. We have expertise in zoning code updates, general plans. In our 40 years, we're actually celebrating our 40 years in business this year. We've prepared over 40 zoning and subdivision codes, over 65 general plans, one of which was the City of Pleasant Hill general plan. So we were the consultant team, as Haley mentioned, on your successful general plan update, as well as your successful housing element update and some follow-up tasks associated with that. Really, this project is just the end task of this overall multifaceted, multi-year project, really the implementation portion of the project. So let's talk a little bit about the project, why we're here tonight. Tonight, we are looking at a zoning ordinance update and the zoning map. So the zoning ordinance essentially is the tool in the city's toolbox, code of ordinances, that allows the implementation of land use changes that are called out in your general plan. So think of zoning as really just a tool that implements your general plan. That's why we're here this evening. You went through a comprehensive general plan update that set a new vision, goal, land use policies. And in order to achieve that vision, we now need to make necessary zoning amendments. So we looked at implementing your housing element, all the various elements in your general plan. This was also an opportunity for our team and your city staff, and through study sessions with the Planning Commission, to look at areas that have kind of vexed you as implementers for years, problem areas. And we created this comprehensive fix-it list to really improve, modernize, and streamline your development regulations was the overall goal, in addition to implementing your general plan. Here's just a graphic overview of this project. We started with an administrative draft. We worked with your city staff to produce then a preliminary draft. You, the Planning Commission, saw various drafts in these phases. We facilitated 3 study sessions with you, and you very much had a hand in crafting the provisions that we now have before you today. In addition to within that structure, we also presented 2 study sessions very similar to the layout that we presented with you to the City Council, and we received additional feedback, of which we've incorporated that feedback and is for your review this evening. We are now in the public review draft period, where we are presenting a fully fleshed out zoning ordinance complete draft before you this evening. We have received public comment that has been transmitted to the Planning Commission for review this evening. The next step after this is we are hopefully forwarding a recommendation to City Council for the adoption of these amendments and the zoning map. We will go to City Council next. That is another opportunity for the public to participate in this planning process. And as the Planning Commission knows, and I'll just reiterate for the public's benefit, the City Council is the ultimate decision maker in this process. So the Planning Commission is simply forwarding a recommendation to City Council. The City Council really will be, like I said, the decision maker here. Those will be 2 hearings we have planned for the City Council, just allow ample time for public comment. So with that, I'll dive into the actual amendments themselves. I'll preface the rest of this presentation by saying that the largest structural change that you will see isn't one that is actually in text. The largest change that we performed to this ordinance actually has to do with the organization and the structure of the content within it. What I want to do is, before we actually get into the specifics, I want to just provide an overview of the organization for your benefit and just for the general public's. So we have organized the new ordinance into a total of 6 parts. I want to run through the organization of those parts briefly. This will also be the structure that I will run through the rest of these amendments. So I'll just touch on these. Part 1. Think of this as your introductory chapter to your zoning ordinance. It just has relevant information that the Planning Commission as implementers and the public as users would want to know before digging in to the substance of the zoning ordinance. So in here, we have standards that explain if there's a conflict in standards, what's the relationship between your zoning and your general plan. This is also where we establish your various zones and tie it back to the implementing general plan designations. So introductory is part 1. Part 2 is probably the set of regulations that the public will interact with the most. That's because this is where we specify all of your zones, all of the allowed land uses within your zones, and then the subsequent development standards. This is also where we have your land use or standards for specific land uses like ADUs, vehicle storage. Part 3 ends up being a catch-all. These are standards. We've grouped these standards that are applicable citywide. So you'll find your landscaping standards here, signage, tree preservation, various performance standards. Moving on to part 4, this is where we document and we explain all of the various entitlements and procedures that a code user might have to go through when they're implementing or when they're going through a project. So in here, we specify the procedural requirements for a minor exception or getting a use permit or obtaining a zoning permit. So all of these entitlements we explain in detail. We specify who's the review authority within that, the typical review time, and then most importantly, the findings that you, the Planning Commission, and the City Council will have to make to approve a project that is before you for consideration. Part 5 is an administrative group of provisions. This is where we house more of the procedural standards that you, Planning Commission, and city staff use, not really a section of standards that is often referenced by the general public. And then part 6 contains all of the definitions. This is broken up into 2 sections. One that provides definitions for all of the land uses, essentially all of the businesses that you, the city would allow, and all the types of activities, residential and non-residential. And then we have just general terms that you would find potentially in the zoning ordinance itself. So general overview of the organization. Now what I would like to do is actually dive into the amendments themselves. I'll say that because we've been working with the Planning Commission through multiple study sessions, the front end of some of this will look familiar because not a lot has changed, except for a few instances where we've gone back to the City Council for their study sessions and they've requested specific amendments. So I've highlighted those and I will highlight those throughout my presentation, but I'll also just provide a comprehensive overview of just the general amendments that were made to each of these parts. So to start, we'll get into part 1. Again, here we started with a new structure. We implemented that structure and format throughout this part. This will be a recurring note that you'll see in all of the subsequent parts that I'll describe. One more note that I want to point out here, there's a lot here, is we have these brackets at the end of each of these bullet points. This was something that we thought would be beneficial for you, the decision makers, to see. This is indicating the your option as a decision body, whether or not to implement this change, whether you'll see a couple of different tags. There's an optional, which is us as the consultant team working with your city staff proposing a best practice. Then you'll see state law change, that is a requirement. And then you'll see another tag called general plan housing element consistency. We've flagged essentially all of these changes so that you and the public are aware of why we made them. So just keep an eye out for those bracketed changes, as some of it is relevant. And some of these options can be changed. Some of them can't, just based on state law. In your part 1, we also created a comprehensive matrix where we've established all of your zones, the development standards, and then the corresponding general plan land use designation. This is helpful because we want to tie that relationship back to your general plan. Again, this is just the implementation task of that overall update. What we also did here is we've updated the general naming conventions to be consistent with your general plan. And we've also updated the density and intensity standards. So that's that dwelling units per acre and FAR. Those are ways that we control development. And we've, your general plan envisioned some increases and some changes there. And so the zoning needed to be updated for consistency. We've also established in here, as you'll find, some new zones, as I'll touch on later, that were required to implement some new land use designations that your general plan envisioned and called for. So since we brought this back to the City Council requested a couple of updates, really one update. And one was to revise and clarify some of the language that we had talking about the relationship between overlay zones and base zones. And so we fixed that language and when we applied that in your part 2. But other than that, that was the only request from the previous time that Planning Commission saw this part. So not real substantive changes. Part 2 is where we start to see a lot of the work done and where a lot of the direction came and changes were made. Part 2, again, contains all of the standards for your zoning districts, development standards, and then allowable land uses. We've divided this into a total of 8 chapters. Each chapter is focused on the various zoning districts and within them, the general category. So we have a section on mixed use, a section on residential. Then we have 7 and 8 at the bottom, which I'll touch on here a little bit later in this presentation, which are new zones for the Planning Commission's consideration. So amendments to Part 2, again, included the reorganization of the structure. It also included some state law required updates specifically to your density bonus provisions. That is a state mandated requirement as an incentive to developers to build affordable housing. We also updated your accessory dwelling unit regulations consistent with state law. California is a very land use regulatory heavy state. So we see a series of changes really coming out every year that we needed to incorporate, these two being one of the most recent and prevalent. We also then went through and updated your zoning district descriptions to ensure that all of the land uses, development standards were consistent with your general plan. The purpose statements are really helpful for you as a commission, for the general public to read, because they understand really what is the expectation for development within a particular zone. So we made sure that we've updated that for clarity and consistency with your general plan. We also went through and added some additional land uses based on best practice and state law. Some of these are majority of these are residential oriented, but we also have some non-residential land uses that we've added just based on best practice, like places of assembly, colleges and universities, and various types of emergency shelters. We also went through and analyzed the development standards for each of your zones, all your residential and non-residential zones, and proposed updates where the general plan called for it or envisioned it, or based on best practice. Some of these here, as the scenic route as showing on, for example, was specifically a general plan requirement that was implemented. There was also the creation of a new zoning district, which we're calling the Mangini-Delu RMD zone. If the commission remembers, this was a site that was flagged in both the general plan and identified in the housing element. We have created a implementing zoning district to ensure consistency with your general plan and housing element. We also created 2 new zones, as I'll explain here shortly, implementing a Parks and Rec and your open space general plan designations. And then updated and applied or reviewed really the review authority for those new zones, and worked with your city staff to really hone in as to who's going to be the review authority, what is the typical review process for projects that might come in these zones. From our city council meetings, there were a multitude of requests and updates to Part 2 that now I want to highlight and go through with the commission. One, previously when we were presenting the initial drafts of this code to you, the Mangini site, we had proposed a concept of 2 implementing zones. Now, based on planning commission discussion, public comment, and then meeting with the city council, we've decided to go back to a single zone to implement that. It just is going to work a little bit better. Instead, what we've done is we've crafted development standards and added some specificity within the development standards themselves that don't require us to have this 2-zone approach anymore. So now you'll just see 1 implementing zone. That's a change. We also updated the name of the zone too. It was just called single family zoning district. That zone actually calls for a variety of housing types. So commission's request and public's request, we actually modified that to just the Mangini residential zoning district. And then we added some additional language here based on public comment that wanted to see a stronger establishment of the fact that when development takes place on this site, a comprehensive site-wide master plan would have to be developed and adopted prior to development. And that was a real concern that we wanted to emphasize to the public, that projects have to have an adopted master plan prior to projects being coming in and being approved. So we added that language in there as well. There was also a request from the city council to remove a provision that was requiring eating areas in non-residential office type environments. If you exceeded 10,000 square foot, you had to have some sort of cafeteria. That was a request to remove that. So we've done. We have also made some updates to the Parks and Rec district that we had initially presented. The purpose of this Parks and Rec district is to implement the new Parks and Recreation designation in your general plan. So all of those properties, we needed to have a corresponding zone with it. So we've created that. In here, we have specified a series of development standards. We've clarified maximum heights, and we've established various permits and review processes for various types of projects. Now, the difference between this zone and the other zones is that the Pleasant Hill Rec and Parks District is really the review authority in most cases of this zone. They have their own established process, their own public hearings that they go through, and have committed to implementing and still following the CEQA guidelines that are required for projects. So they are an independent body. And so we've identified their role as such. So projects will go through to the Pleasant Hill Rec and Park District, and in rare cases might come back to the Planning Commission for review for certain types of land uses. Based on public feedback and council direction, we also clarified some activities that would be exempt in this recreational zone, and also tied a stronger connection back to the requirement of noise standards, performance standards, meaning that there is the potential for a conflict of various noise associated with recreational facilities. Now, a new zone that the commission has not seen previously is a new zone to implement the open space designation. That is a new designation as part of your general plan. We needed a corresponding zoning district to implement it. This zone is applied to all open space general plan designated areas in the city. The intent here is to limit development on these properties as envisioned in the general plan. This is mainly envisioned for open space areas. However, there are some existing single family uses that are established in these. The idea is that those would, of course, be able to continue perpetuity. But really the intent here is to have habitat conservation, wild habitat protection, and also facilitate cultural and historic preservation. Again, all projects, like all other zones, have to comply with CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act, have to comply with Subdivision Map Act. So they're not circumventing any of the standard state required procedures. Previously, when we had presented this to the planning committee, or when we had presented this zone to the city council, they had recommended, we had established some initial development standards as just a foundation for any potential project that might come in the open space. The council actually recommended that we make that a project by project determinant. So a project would come in, have to go through some discretionary process to be built in the recreational zone, but the development standards would be analyzed per that application. So we've foregone establishing base standards, as every project that would have to come in would have to seek at least some discretionary approval. So I'm going to take a quick pause there. We've gone through two parts. I want to hand it back briefly to the Planning Commission to see if there are just any initial questions on part one and part two before I go into part three.
Okay, do we have any questions on parts 1 and 2? No. Oh, yes.
I just have one question, and it's not a big deal, but why did the what am I thinking for? Scenic
Open space?
space go from 50 to 25 feet?
Are you talking about the setback?
Yeah.
So that was identified as a constraint in your housing element to development. So because it was, the thought is that you're restricting the developable land. And so the state has flagged that for your housing element through their review as a constraint to development. So that was, it was cut in half, modified as part of a program for your general plan and housing element.
Any further questions? Okay. Thank you.
Perfect. So moving on to part three, again, this is the section of regulations that are kind of the catch-all. So regulations that apply citywide. in here, updated your organization. We also took the opportunity to update some graphics. This is a comprehensive update after all. And so if we could provide some clarity, graphics end up being a really good way of explaining more confusing language or standards. So we went through, we updated figures as you'll see in the draft before you. We also went through and revised duplicative provisions and clarified certain review authorities and roles as it related to certain land uses. So there was language relating to the city engineer and the zoning administrator. We wanted to make sure that we were consistent and aligned with the expectations of the roles. We also updated the parking regulations based on best practices. So in some cases, we have reduced the parking requirement, the parking space requirement. Some of this was due to state law. We have to exempt some land uses from parking requirements now. Others were best practice, and then other changes were mandated just based on your general plan. We also, per the commission's request, addressed EV charging stations as well, and really made a connection to the building code as to that is the building regulations are the ones that really regulate those spaces. The Parks and Rec District, the change, because you, based on city council direction, one change that we've made to part 3 is specific to the parking regulations. Now parking and the amount of parking for the park and recreation facility, it will be determined on a case-by-case basis by the zoning administrator. So it won't necessarily follow the standard. You look at your land use and then you look at what is the number of parking spaces associated with that. Just given the wide range of potential projects that might come in a rec and park district, it'd be better to have that analyzed periodically on a project-by-project basis. Part 4, moving on to part 4, establishes the permit processing procedures. These are, again, the various entitlements that an applicant might have to seek, go to the planning commission or city council for when they're implementing or using the zoning ordinance, updated the structure, refined the findings that you, the planning commission, have to make. We tried to front load those in this section in the organization. That way it's easy to find, easy to reference. Also sets clear expectations for applicants as to what the city will be looking at when a project comes in. We also updated the reasonable accommodation request section. This is a state law and housing element requirement in which those with disabilities via the American Disabilities Act can go to the city and request minor modifications or accommodations to various development standards requirement of state law. There's also refinements of your master sign permit and your sign permit submittal processes as sign permits. We also took a look at your minor use permits and your use permit procedures. One thing that we did here is we tried our best to make the organization consistent. So we start with a purpose statement that then goes into an applicability statement, then it establishes the review authority. I mean, we've really tried to keep that consistent so it's the expectations are set. And we also established new language and added some clarifying language for the variance section. Variances are a state regulated process with certain findings. We just clarified those findings per state law. Since presenting part 4 to the Planning Commission, there have not been any updates. So the previous draft that you had seen has not changed. Part 5, one more part after this is your zoning ordinance administration. Again, we looked at the organization, reformatted, updated language as it relates to development agreements. We clarified the intent of that chapter and created a new section, called out a new section for the findings for development agreement or an application that might come in. And we also added new language explaining and clarifying the city's non-conforming provisions, some structural changes, non-conforming provisions relating to maybe a non-conforming parcel, a non-conforming land use, or a non-conforming structure. And of those, the 3 distinctions we see there. We also codified some alternative noticing requirements that the state allows jurisdictions to do. This is pretty standard. Essentially just allows alternative noticing if there are a certain threshold of notices that have to go out, just budgetary constraints. Cities can't exceed this requirement. The city does, but we just established this as a base minimum. Updates from the previous time that the Planning Commission saw this is there was a recommendation in the initial draft to limit the amount of appeals that could go to the Planning Commission. Based on public comment, we have since removed that. That was also supported by the City Council. So now there is no limit to the amount of appeals. The Planning Commission still can call up a project for review, so can the City Council. It doesn't stop at the Planning Commission. It can go beyond that. And then lastly, part 6, amendments really include a comprehensive analysis and review of your definitions, your land use definitions, and your just general terms that are used in your zoning ordinance. Really important, some of these are new mandated land uses so that the state is requiring we address, accessory dwelling units being one of them. And then others are just best practices and new land uses that we've added based on staff preference or public comment. And there have been really no substantial changes. There have been minor modifications to some of the language just for consistency, but there have not been substantial additions to the terminology and the drafts that was previously presented to the Planning Commission. So that will do it for the zoning ordinance portion. What is this? Another task that we're considering this evening is the zoning map, as this was an additional task for this larger project. So maybe before I get into the map amendments, I'll hand it back to the chair once more, see if there are any clarifying questions.
Okay, do we have any clarifying questions at this point? No? Okay, thank you.
Well, I think I've said it, I don't know how many times now, but the city went through a general plan update. As part of that general plan update, you updated your general plan land use diagram. Now, every general plan has a land use diagram, and that is the first starting point for shaping the urban fabric of your community. It does so by establishing designations, and within those designations, you, the city, the Planning Commission, City Council, and the public weighed in as to what you envisioned in these various districts or designations spread throughout the city. And here's an example of what this zoning map looks like. This is just highlighting a couple of certain properties that we're talking about this evening, but this is essentially kind of what a general plan map looks like. Now, this is your zoning map. The zoning map is an additional map that implements your general plan map. And so because your general plan went through establishing a new vision and making updates to your various designations within the general plan, we need to update your zoning map to implement that. Now, the general plan went through a comprehensive multi-year community engagement effort. It went through multiple study sessions. There was a general plan advisory committee that was made up of the general public, decision makers, in which all of the decisions in the land use were hashed out, debated over, decided over. Heavy community engagement was also a part of that, and public input. I know that there were changes to the last minute, even before city council adoption, in which the public came forward and requested changes. The city council did that. I guess the reason why I'm saying that is because it was a very forward-facing process, and this is really just implementing that effort and complementing the general plan effort. So the scope of this zoning amendment is really limited to just implementing the changes in your general plan. So where your general plan envisioned a new land use designation or a new development, we needed to update now your zoning to implement that. So that's really the changes that you see before you. What I want to do is just dive into each of these. The staff report does a way better job of diving into and explaining more of the changes within each of these zones. But for the staff report, we've divided this up into a quadrant. And I just want to walk through these quadrants briefly with you as to just the general changes that you can expect. So it starts with A, the top left corner, and then B, the top right, and then C and D are the bottom. So we'll start with A. The first major change that you'll see in quadrant A is related to the implementation of your Parks and Rec new zoning designation. So we've just designated existing Parks and Rec facilities. There's also the rezoning of some residential land uses, some along Ridgeview Drive. The Mangini Delu property is within here identified as the kind of that orange color attached with the green. And there were also some changes from what would be considered like a lower density zone into a higher density zone. So we see like an R10, which is a single family zone going into a multifamily. Again, all of this adopted and envisioned, called out for in your general plan. Moving to quadrant B now, again, we see some zone changes related to the parks and rec and also the open space zone that we've added in here. These include a variety of parks, Pleasant Hill Park being one of them. And then there are a series of zoning amendments related to residential areas and then commercial and mixed use areas. So we have really some density increases that we see here off of Camelback Road, and then some increases off of Contra Costa Boulevard from an R7 to a mixed use envisioned higher intensity style of development. Commercial and mixed use areas were also rezoned in some cases, Diablo Valley Plaza, and also some additional properties along Contra Costa Boulevard that were changed from a professional office and some single family into mixed use. Quadrant C now, additional parks and rec changes is highlighted in the green. There are also some changes to the envisioned intensity of some of the neighborhoods, is specifically related to the mixed use neighborhood designations, districts. One thing that I want to call out for this particular quadrant is that there is a needed update from the map that you have before you this evening for consideration. The properties off of Babbitt Court, on Babbitt Court off of Cleveland are currently designated on the map before you as MFM. When we went back to the general plan doing quality control, we actually realized that that should be R10. So I just want to clarify that for the Planning Commission. We will build that in as forward our recommendation to City Council to fix that, but there are just a handful of properties. Imagine everything in that square would actually just be yellow. But doing our due diligence, trying to go through these, there were, of course, over 1,000 rezones. So one of these ended up falling through the cracks, but we have identified it. So the required change here, as mentioned, would be to update that in the map that goes to City Council to reflect an R10 rezone as opposed to a MFM rezone. And we move on to the last quadrant, quadrant D. We see some, mainly here, some parks and recreational changes. Again, Roger Smith Park, Dinosaur Hill, schoolhouse property. And then we have some mixed use and multifamily residential rezones as well. So 2 parcels near Pleasant Hill Road and Gregory Lane, those went to a mixed use high density. And then we also have some changes to the intensity of multifamily residential uses to, I guess, north of Geary Road, and you have some additional mixed use envisioned to the north near Grayson. So went through that, but I want to hand it back to the Planning Commission now to see if there are any questions specific to the zoning map before I move on to the next steps. And well, actually, let me just go over next steps and then I can hand it back for clarifying questions. We're almost finished here. So next steps is we're hoping for a successful recommendation tonight to the City Council. We have those tentatively scheduled. We have flagged them. The review process, it would of course go out, this draft would go out to public review and comment again. Comments would be forwarded to the City Council for their review, and there would be 2 hearings. There'd be a first reading and then a following adoption. So that's what we have next for our team, in addition to making the zoning amendment change as noted. So I'll hand it back to the commission to see if there are any clarifying questions before opening up for public comment.
Thank you. Questions?
Well, these dates may not be established yet, but are there dates proposed for when this would go to the City Council if in fact a recommendation from the Planning Commission went forward tonight?
We don't have anything scheduled yet. We will have to redo public noticing. So there's a lot of legal requirements we have to hit. So no date yet, but it will be posted on our website as soon as we are ready to notify.
Thank you.
Yes, I have a few questions. So, in terms of the timeline, in the staff report, I believe I read that the changes to the zoning ordinances and map need to be done within 3 years. What was the initiation date of that 3-year period? And does the timeline of going back twice to city council fit within that timeline?
I believe you might be referring to the housing element implementation rezones, which was already a project that was already conducted. So we're actually outside of that 3-year period. We met that time frame.
Not that, okay.
But
So
I'll
there,
hand it to see if city staff has anything to clarify.
Well, so that there's 2 timeframes. Michael's correct. We did hit the housing element rezones. This piece, though, there are many components as part of this that are in programs in the general plan and housing element. And I believe the policy is approximately 2 years from the adoption of the general plan, which, we are in that general range, and hope to be at city council at least by the end of the year, which will hopefully stay within that range.
so follow up to that is if within today's discussion and public comment, if there are recommendations that planning commission wishes to make to city council, this is the last opportunity from the planning commission.
Yeah. So any recommendation that you have to city council, this would be the meeting to make them.
Okay. Let me see what else is. Okay, so the timeline on approving the changes to the map is in the same timeline as making changes to the zoning ordinance updates.
Yes, the rezoning is part of the same effort.
Okay, so then that leads me to, are there still opportunities for the zoning map boundaries of these various highlighted areas that you've shown us in the 4 quadrants? Is there an opportunity to change any of those boundaries or change any of those designations?
It depends what the change would be. I mean, ultimately, they need to correspond to the underlying general plan designation. So if there's a proposed change that's not consistent with the general plan, that then opens up a potential process to amend that. But
After this map is approved?
well, so this map, whatever the rezonings that are approved, the new zones have to correspond with the general plan by law.
So then after this zoning map is approved, there are opportunities to then reopen zoning, a rezoning of some of the areas that are potentially contentious. I'm just trying to understand the process. If there's a certain process that we have to follow in order to approve the map by the end of the year, what is the recourse after that point?
Commissioner Chiang, if you're asking if we could change it after we go through this process, like anything else, it can change, but it would be a separate process to do that.
Understood. Okay. And so any change before it goes to city council is only within this time period by the end of this year.
Well, the commission can make a recommendation that is inconsistent with the general plan, but I think Haley was noting that, there are some issues if we don't change the zoning to match the general plan. It would be inconsistent, and depending on what that is, it could lead to future challenges.
Such as?
Well, such as if you have a zoning that's inconsistent with the general plan, technically for a lot of state provisions, the general plan governs. So even if it's inconsistent for certain types of, say, streamlining projects, it goes with it goes with the general plan.
Which is the more stringent?
Well, which is your land use rule book, if you will. The zoning just implements the general plan. I shouldn't say just, but that's what it does.
I think I'm clear on that. Thank you.
I just want to clarify from my perspective what I understand. So from what I understand, all the zoning and land use decisions were made when the general plan was adopted in May of 2023. And what we're doing today is just updating the implementation documents to support the previously approved land use decisions that are in the general plan. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's correct. This is
Okay.
a second phase to make sure everything is now consistent.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
May I ask a question sort of relative to not just the general plan, but also the certification process with housing and community development? How does that work? I mean, because part of our general plan has been certified and we are compliant, correct?
Correct. You
And
are
that was a process that was long, arduous, and required multiple submissions because what we were hoping the state would accept, they said was not sufficient. And I mean, you guys were in the trenches with that as well as us. So I think it's, as we talk and consider changes to that, I think the questions we have to consider is, do we lose certification as well? And what the implications of that are for the community if our housing element is no longer certified.
Definitively, it's difficult to say if certain components of this are not adopted. Clearly, the housing element included a multitude of programs that are captured here in the zoning ordinance amendment and the rezoning. Whether the state would determine that if we didn't implement one program versus another one, I don't know if that would result in decertification, but it certainly is a possibility with how aggressive the state of California has been with housing elements. But not knowing specifically which programs we may not necessarily comply with, it's difficult to say what could be down the road.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much. Okay, at this time, I would like to open up the floor for public comment. And before we get that started, I had a few things I wanted to go over, just so that we can know what to expect. I want to reiterate my thanks for you all coming. Your voices are important here. We really do treasure them. I've read every letter that's been submitted, and your opinions, your perspective, all of this is very, very important to us, which means we want to hear all of you. Which means we want to do this, as some would say, decently and in order. And so how we're going to do that is, because of the number of people here, public comment time is going to be 2 minutes. You're going to have 2 minutes to tell us what you would like to say. When you come up to the lectern, you'll see that on your right will be a green, a yellow, and a red light. When you start, the green light's going to go on. When the yellow light goes on, it's time to start completing your thoughts, and get what you want the bulk of your statement to say, because we want to be respectful of the other people who are here who want to say something. And so kindly try to keep yourself within the 2 minutes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be calling up, if you haven't yet, for those of you in the chamber here, if you haven't yet submitted your card and taken them up to Shannon, please do so. I'm going to be calling you up in groups of 3. And then when one is finished, the other will come up. That'll help us move faster. Once we're done with that, if you are in the overflow room, if you have comments, we'll be having you guys come up in groups of 5. But we are intent on hearing everybody here who wants to say something, so we're going to be doing that. what'll happen is I'll read off your name. If I mispronounce your name, I'm really, really sorry. Feel free to correct me. I will do my best. And then everybody here does have an important point to make, and we really want to respect that. And so when somebody's speaking at the podium, we'd really appreciate it if they were the only person speaking or making noise. So if somebody says something that you're just like, yeah, that's right, please don't get up and cheer. Nobody do the wave. We really want to be able to hear what you guys are saying because we know that this is important to you. So no clapping, no cheering, no hissing or booing. I can't imagine that would happen. But please don't do that because we want to keep it factual and we do want to keep this respectful. If somebody's saying something that you really want to agree with, you can put your hands up like that. If that's not expressive enough for you, you can do jazz hands. Okay. This is, as we learned in the Planning Commissioners Academy, this is best practice. Okay. So if, that is what we would really like you to do because, again, what you guys say is very important, but we have to be able to hear it. So with that, I am going to open the public comment time for this. Depending on how we go along, how long we go on this, we'll probably be taking a break. So if we need that, so expect that to happen. We're not locked to our seats for the duration of the evening. In no particular order, Michelle Lacey, Robert Toso, and Steve Spafford.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, members of the commission. My name is Michelle Lacey. I'm the general manager of the Pleasant Hill Recreation and Park District. And I'm here to thank the commission, consultants, city council, and staff for your hard work on creating what I think is a very fair and good park district zone. As we mentioned, we're trying to get our general plan and our zoning consistent. Previous general plans have never had a park zone. It has always been a residential zone with park designated in the general plan. So I appreciate us finally getting to that point. And I think we have some great standards that we now can work with the city staff and make sure that all of our parks remain protected and in great shape and into the future. And so, so I really appreciate that. And I appreciate all of the hard work on that.
Thank you. Is Robert Toso here? All right, we'll set that aside. Steve Spafford.
Can't believe I'm that early. I don't have a whole lot prepared, but I just want to say I'm a 40-year resident of Roberta Avenue, and I try to keep track of what's going on in the city. And I cannot believe that we did not know that the area east of Beatrice and Roberta was included in the general plan as multifamily use. There's no reason in the very beginning that should have been anything other than single family. And so I'm here to propose that be changed to single family. That may screw up your general plan, I don't know, but I don't know how you could develop that for anything else other than that. And then even if it is changed or not changed, I don't know how you can actually develop anything in there. Traffic would be horrible. Right now, that area is a one-lane street. If people are parking on both sides of the street, the creek setback is a very significant issue, and it's flood control district, right? It's owned by the flood control, so it's there for a reason. And to mitigate that would be you'd have to build it on higher land, which would make it even worse. And then also getting emergency vehicles in there would be almost impossible. So I'm not sure how it got included in the general plan as even developable property. That may have been an oversight, I don't know, but I would strongly recommend it either just be made open space or at the very maximum single family home. Thank you.
Thank you. That's amazing.
Yeah, that really worked.
All right. Next we have Ryan Guest, Scott Lloyd, and Stephen Weiss.
Thanks, Commission. I'm Steve's neighbor at 423 Roberta, Ryan Guest. I wanted to talk about, similar to what he said, specifically the homes at 510 Beatrice, 520 Beatrice, 535 Beatrice, 500 Soleil, and 501 Soleil. I read through the general plan, the housing element, and it was a total surprise to me that they were included. I don't, that interpretation seems inconsistent with the plan. So I'd like you to take a look at that. Personally, Steve mentioned the floodplain. I've done over $100,000 of work to my house that moved in 5 years ago, and that floodplain is saving me. Foundation repairs, added foundation anchor, French drain, sump pump, I mean, the whole 9 yards. And that's all the houses on that Roberta Street. It floods every winter, and the floodplain is essential protecting us. As far as traffic, it would degrade the level of service on traffic on both Roberta and Beatrice. There's a 2,000-foot strip between Pleasant Hill Middle School, Sequoia Elementary, and Sequoia Middle School. Sequoia Elementary has 594 students, Sequoia Middle School has 835, and Pleasant Hill Middle School has 719 students. And to send all those homes traffic in the morning at drop off right through there on that one lane road that Steve mentioned, I don't see how that would work. So I'd strongly advise you to take a look at that. And those are my main concerns. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Scott Lloyd. I live on Marta Drive. I'm here tonight to urge you to carefully reconsider the proposed rezoning of our neighborhood to mixed use. While I understand the city's housing mandates, this proposal brings risks to our community that haven't been fully addressed. The character of our neighborhood is at stake. Pleasant Hill has always valued the charm and livability of its single-family homes. Allowing taller, denser buildings next to our houses would erode the qualities that drew families here in the first place. I'm concerned that the necessary investments needed for the aging homes in our neighborhood would be discouraged by this rezoning. I'm also concerned about the negative impact this would have on selling our homes to other families. Who would want to invest in our community in the next decade when the future of our neighborhood's planning is so uncertain? Families in our community might also find necessary to relocate and be met with less potential buyers than the surrounding areas just because of the rezoning. Traffic and infrastructure. Marta Drive and the surrounding streets are narrow with only 2 ways in and out of the neighborhood. Adding higher density and commercial activity would create significant issues, worsen congestion, put pressure on the local infrastructure, sewers, drainage, utilities. Even public safety is a concern. Increased access points, specifically egress options, and a commercial presence would invite more crime. Environment and quality of life. More density means more noise, more pollution, and a loss of green space and tree canopy, all things that impact the health and quality of life of also living close to a freeway. Quoting the mayor, Sue Nowak, from the General Planning Advisory Committee meetings where she was discussing our neighborhood rezoning to mixed use, as long as it does not negatively impact those that want to stay there and live there in a residential fashion, I ask, how could it not? Finally, the process. Many residents, myself included, were unaware of this rezoning until just weeks ago. We deserve a transparent, comprehensive plan that includes clear design standards, realistic infrastructure solutions, and genuine community input. Rushing through changes of this magnitude without the engagement of the impacted communities is deceptive and short-sighted. We all recognize the need for more housing and really housing affordability, but it must be balanced with the needs of our current residents. I ask you not to move forward with the rezoning of Marta Drive to mixed use until a true plan is in sight, one that respects both the city's housing goals and the community we've worked hard to build and would want to continue to live in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Field and Commissioners. For the record, I'm Steve Weiss. I live at 270 Keats Circle over in Poets Corner. I have no affiliation to districts or anything. I'm just here speaking for myself. It's a little bit of a slippery slope we have tonight. We have a group of people here, and I think a lot of them are concerned with their 1,080 parcels. I think Commissioner Chang and Commissioner Vavrick and yourself are starting to pull on a twine right there and asking questions about certification and things like that. Well, we're here tonight because there was a decision made on certain parts of the general plan, and they were dealing with HCD, which is Housing and Community Development. And they certified this housing element, and this is what they agreed to. These 1,080 parcels are not really the true hard zoning of parcels. They're zoning opportunities tied to a housing element. Housing element law is quite different. And what the problem we're going to see is that we don't really have an overlay for the city when it comes to sound land use planning. I mean, you guys do a great job, and I'm not here to tell you what to do. But I truly believe that whether it's spot zoning that could occur, be accused of on some parcels, or the 1,080 that looked like, if I had one of those pieces of property, I don't know if I would call it a deed restriction, but I wouldn't want that on my property, honestly, because I don't know what's going to happen 10 years down the road. I would say, and I understand the challenges of Gregory and Poets Corner and the flooding and all that. My heart's out to them. But the elephant in the room to me really is Contra Costa Boulevard. Yeah, they put a bunch of units along East Vivian and along Kennedy and all those places there. But why in the heck don't we entertain an overlay, a specific plan overlay for Contra Costa Boulevard from Main Street all the way up to Pacheco? That's where the vacant and underutilized parcels are in the city. You can go Ace Hardware, you can go any of these places, and there's just huge swaths of land that there's nothing there. And that's where you could have true mixed-use zoning. And let's be honest, those are the areas that need some continuity. The downtown planner's lucky enough to have a little redevelopment, but they have some big holes there too. There could be other zoning opportunities there. So all I ask is that you think about the idea of entertaining a overlay within that area, work collaboratively with these people, because they do, I think they're blindsided because they didn't understand probably what happened with the 2040 update.
Yes, and your time has expired, so.
Okay, and finally, I just hope that you ask questions about what by right zoning means. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Patty McNamee, Albert Francis, and Julie Franco. Did I get that right?
McNamee.
McNamee,
It was
sorry.
close. Yeah. You're not the first one to pronounce it that way. So, commissioners, I live on Hardy Circle, and I am retired Contra Costa County, 33 years. I sort of understand the planning process, even though I was in public works. I know about the flooding in Pleasant Hill. It's pretty much the only place in Contra Costa County that still has flooding. I understand all the backgrounds with the Corps. But I was very surprised, and I've seen your advertisements for your general plan. I know what you've been through, to find 2 properties on the end of Soleil included in the multifamily. So I know that they were not included in the housing element that you did in December of 2022. So I'm not exactly sure why they were added in this, other than maybe the planner wanted to draw straight lines through there and included 2 properties. The same with some of the properties on the end of Beatrice. They could really change the feeling of our neighborhoods to make them multifamily. Soleil is basically a 1-lane road when we have parking on both sides. I'm very concerned that adding these 2 properties is going to cause there to be a connection through to Cleveland, and we would have through traffic coming through there, and the city might at some point decide we can't park on the street anymore because there's not enough room for a 2-lane road through there. So, you know, that's sort of things that down the road that I see could possibly happen with those 2 properties included. And the same with Beatrice. If that connects through to Cleveland, it changes the whole neighborhood there. So I really think that you should consider removing those properties and making sure that the Poets Corner neighborhood stays separate from the multifamily housing that you do along Cleveland, which I think is necessary. So, and obviously I just want to say that in terms of the notice, apparently a lot of people did not get notices. I don't know how many people still get a newspaper and would see a notice in the paper, but I think maybe the properties should each get a notice if they're being rezoned. But anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Albert Franco, and I come just talk about, number 1 is the government code section 65009B. And I have comments about it as far as if it's under the Senate Bill 49. And it is why we're looking into residents, because there's transportation bus stops near Shirley Drive. And if there's any violations of that, you know, we're not still looking into that. Also, there's a vote coming on Senate Bill 79. The building trades just dropped out of opposing that. Not 79. It's going to create for a higher buildings to be built up 60 feet. The building tree's been in agreement, anything above 60 feet, that they'll have all the work is what I understand. And if that's being involved in any of this, it'd be, be nice to know. Hearing other people, I'm not good on percentages, but I guess 90% of Pleasant Hill did not get any notice. You find out the day, weeks before or the day of. I don't have a computer, and I found this on Nextdoor. And there's a lot of senior citizens that are with me that don't have computers and don't know what's going for our advances in this our town. I don't consider us a city or an urban district, which is keep saying it is not urban.
Mhm.
Okay, and this I'd like to know who is the developer that's been negotiating with the city and the town of Pleasant Hill. Has there been any tax credits given to them? Is what I'd like to know. And if so, a lot of this is going to go into city council on Monday nights at 7 p.m. If there is, don't expect a tax increase if we're not agreeing with these projects. I want to know if this developer gave the plans for that mess down on Contra Costa and Taylor Boulevard, if it's going to be the same developer or a changed one.
Yeah.
My wife and I were going northbound on that the other night, and it was almost backed up to play it against sports.
Yeah.
And then that's before all this other stuff's happening, but hopefully it don't happen. But, we're in reality, the law saying it has to here and there. So
Your time has expired. Is there anything else?
I'm cutting out.
Huh?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
If you could just finish your thoughts, your time's expired.
Okay. Oh, yeah, right now, I was going to say to the community, get your warrior spirit out and start attending the Monday night City Hall Council meetings coming up because it's needed. We're going to have to save Pleasant Hill.
Thank you very much.
I'm Julie Franco. Thank you for hearing us tonight. We love Pleasant Hill, so it is hard to realize how many changes are being planned. It's true that I was kind of blindsided, and I do plan to stay better informed. One thing I'm really concerned about or disappointed is when my husband went to go ask some questions at City Hall, he was told it doesn't concern you. And so that's one of the things that I'm concerned about is maybe I've missed all the memos or the articles in the local papers. But I do feel like if this is such a great plan, then it shouldn't be a secret. We should all know about it and kind of be on board. And I don't know if that's the case, but I feel like I know about it. I'm also concerned about the environment and traffic and the kinds of things that large development brings. I would also hate to see some of our classic old buildings be demolished for the kinds of boxes that they make nowadays. I think that our town is quaint and cute. And so I think that a lot of huge development, and again, I don't know as much about the requirements of our town. I know I've been happy with our bike lanes and recycling and things that to me seem like a good future. But as far as development and development of large areas, it concerns me because I think our town is cute. And so I don't really want it to turn into a bunch of huge boxes that are tall and blocking the sun and blocking the trees. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Tara Legaspi, George Josephson, and Gaston Habits.
Please give me some grace because I prepared this when I thought I had 3 minutes. I would like to formally put on the record that social media posts and comments made by individuals who do not live in Pleasant Hill were placed in this evening's public comments record and should be redacted. These individuals do not live here. Their homes and community will not be directly impacted by the proposed rezoning, and their opinions should not carry weight in this matter. Leaving these comments in public record gives undue influence to outside voices, and misrepresents the perspectives of Pleasant Hill residents. I respectfully ask that only comments on current Pleasant Hill residents be considered. When non-resident comments are removed, the record clearly shows that the Pleasant Hill residents overwhelmingly oppose this zoning plan. It did not go unnoticed that the committee's meeting packet buried our voices in 1,451 pages. Instead of elevating residents' concerns, the packet was used to advance an agenda. Regardless of how we feel, it was belittling, dehumanizing, and showed us the rezoning vote was yes before we even walked into this door this evening. We're not asking for much. We simply want to be heard, respected, and for our homes to be valued. We are asking for basic decency. I urge the Planning Commission to vote against any plan that rezones single-family properties or properties that hold or once held single-family homes. We strongly oppose the building multi-unit, multi-level housing adjacent to our creeks. Instead, fix zoning issues by restoring these lots to R20 and R15 single-family homes. The City Council has already approved a multi-story project, a 210-unit project on 85 Cleveland Road. That building sits so empty that the property manager is offering 2 months free rent and $1,000 in rental credit for anyone to move in. Our community is not the market for these types of multi-unit, multi-floor residences to be built. People move here because they love the single-family homes. And we want you to take Soul, Beatrice, and the open space of Cleveland out of your rezoning plan.
Thank you.
My turn?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, my name is George. I live on Peggy Drive and I'm in the West Sherman Acres district.
Can you speak into the microphone, please?
I'm in the West Sherman Acres area.
Mhm.
And I'd like to say that our neighborhood is 75 years old and there's over 250 homes in this affected area. And it doesn't make sense to me to tear down 250 homes to build housing. It makes no sense whatsoever. You've got so many properties that you can develop into housing. You've got the Winslow Center, which is a huge property. You could put hundreds of units there. You've got Bed Bath and Beyond. You've got Rite Aid. You've got the Orchard Supply Lucky's buildings that you can turn into housing. You don't need to destroy all of Pleasant Hill. You can build housing in concentrated areas downtown, which is fine. Another thing I'm worried about is if you change our zoning from single family to mixed use. Will it affect our property values? Who would want to come into our neighborhood? Who would want to buy into our neighborhood if potentially there's going to be redevelopment of our neighborhood? You know, and will our homes be taken by eminent domain at some point in the future if we choose not to sell our homes? Does anybody have an answer to that? Will eminent domain be used at all for any of these developments? Can anybody answer that?
We can't answer questions right now based on like how this works, but we'll get to it. We'll talk about it.
Because there are some of us who never want to sell our homes. We want to die in our homes. I've owned my home for over 40 years and I don't want to sell it under any circumstance. Also, I'd like to see you get rid of the owner occupancy requirements for junior accessory dwelling units. That would increase the housing stock. That would add one more unit to a single family home. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Gaston Havertz. I live on Beatrice Road, and we want to state our opposition to the proposed zoning for the area between Beatrice Road and Grayson Creek. It doesn't fit you have 5 main reasons for that. It doesn't fit the existing neighborhood and it will decrease property values. Beatrice Road has 29 single-family homes with R10 zoning at 3 to 4 houses per acre. And you are proposing 78 units on the Beatrice Road Creek side to Grayson Creek with 20 to 30 units per acre. That goes against your own rezoning stated goals and purposes and intent to maintain and enhance the quality of Pleasant Hill neighborhoods. And I'm abbreviating my previously prepared speech here to stay within the limits. Protect residents from harmful effects of excessive noise, overcrowding, traffic, minimize out-of-scale appearance of large homes, parking areas, and other developments relative to their lot size and to homes in the neighborhood. Third reason, it will cause traffic problems, as Steve already mentioned. Our streets are single lane, most often with cars parked left and right. And people, kids, elderly walk and bike these streets, and you cannot force them an additional 78 housing unit traffic, multiple people in cars, and response times for fire and medical services will be horrible. 4, it doesn't consider Grayson Creek natural environment. The creek is beautiful and a unique part of the neighborhood that Pleasant Hill should not lose. Martinez, Concord, and Walnut Creek have incorporated and revived creeks into their parks, and it's an opportunity and an asset that could increase property values. 5, it doesn't consider the creek flood issues, as mentioned already. Each winter it goes up to the rim or overflows. So our proposal is rezone the area west of Grayson Creek to a density at most that matches the neighborhood, the R10. Use the vacant lot north of the library that is now for Pleasant Hill Parks and Rec and is not used for higher density development, and then trade that for an area around the creek to make a nice park, dog walking, put some victory gardens in, whatever you have. We support the proposal from Friends of Pleasant Hill Creeks to develop a master plan process for all these areas around between Beatrice and Cleveland. And also consider rezoning the former Black Angus site as mixed use with higher density. And on balance, I think north of the Pleasant Hill Library and the Black Angus could even offset any houses that you would lose by not developing at the high density at Beatrice Road. Thank you.
Thank you. Joanne Langerstrom, Sheila Thoras Spafford, and Daniel Langen.
I'm Joanne Lagerstrom, and I live at 365 Ridgeview Drive, which was one of the things there. And I saw this on the map on my computer, and I thought it was densely populated area. And what I saw there, it just said it was multi-family, which it already is. You know, so I'm confused about, oh, excuse me. I have an 8 o'clock alarm. And that about it. I don't know what your purpose was for this change. It seems to me that if this is correct, then there's no change. It's just maybe correcting something. But anyhow, I just feel like a lot of other people that for density populated, it shouldn't be considered because it's rolling hill area and it's separated. It's like the hole in a donut. You know, there's Ridgeview and everything around it is single family houses and other things, and there's no services available to people within 3 miles. So, I mean, I don't understand what it is. So can I have a clarification on what that is for that Ridgeview area?
I apologize. This is a time for public comment. We can't really engage in discussion right now by
Even for
how the format
clarification?
works.
Oh, okay.
So,
I stayed for. Okay.
thank you. Yeah, you could contact staff on that, and they will help you explain it.
Hi there, I'm Sheila. I get nervous, sorry. I'm Sheila Thomas Spafford. I live on Roberta Avenue. And So I know this rezoning is supposedly for the future, but by allowing this to pass, there are things that aren't quite worked out, and so as a citizen, I would like to hear more of how are you going to deal with traffic? Are you going to take front yard space out of Beatrice and Roberta and Soleil? How are you going to do that with the way the community is now? So that I feel is important. And it kind of sounds like you have to make your mind up now or everything gets screwed up. And so perhaps these things that are bothering people in the community won't really be thought about seriously because you've got this deadline. And that just seems pretty unfair. And I too didn't know about it. So anyway, and I do love living in Pleasant Hill. We've been here 40 years. It's amazing. But what do we like? We like that you can walk around the streets. We like the schools. We like the parks. And like at the end of Beatrice, if you put in multifamily housing on the west side of the creek, I mean, the houses, there's 3 houses with the little ticks. So that kind of tells me that those might be knocked down so somebody can build those buildings. And they're your community people. They're your people who love Pleasant Hill. And I don't want to say screw, but I will. You don't want to screw them when there are alternatives. And I'm worried that you won't take the time because there's a crunch. I know you all care, I really do. But when you're down to a crunch and people want to share their feelings and their concerns, and that we don't get the time to know. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Daniel Langen. Thank you all for being here and for listening. We really appreciate it and for you guys hearing us out. I live on Celia Drive, and one of the things I wanted to point out was that it makes sense, and I understand the intent to build affordable units, but there are a lot of issues, including one of the big things that I was reading through is that the minimum requirement for a mixed-use building in the Celia area is only 7,500 square feet for the lot, which is very small. So essentially, you could have somebody come in, buy 1, maybe 2 homes, and build a bank that's a 50-foot tall building right in the middle of a residential neighborhood, which doesn't make sense for the long-term plan and for the safety of residents, et cetera. I also feel that if there was going to be a minimum, raise it, make it 40 or 50,000, or make it more than an acre, something that would be a little more, palpable if somebody was going to come in. Of course, I don't see that as the preferred option in the first place. So no developments there in the residential area and keeping it single family. But if there were going to be any changes, I would ask that it be increased in terms of the minimum requirements for square footage. And then also, as many have stated, I would be curious about the eminent domain question because it really poses a risk to wanting to develop more in your current property or for the residents wanting to move here or those that want to sell their homes. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill Capshaw, Enrique Escobar, and Phil Altman.
Yeah, I live on Shirley Drive, and I've been there 46 years raising a family. And we've always really been enjoyed that subdivision. But lately, in the last few years, the city's been letting build houses behind other houses there on Shirley Drive. And there's no parking and there's nowhere to walk. Shirley Drive was set up to be the exit out of Gregory Gardens because it's a lot wider. You can't, and the families walk down to the grocery store and they get almost run over. And you're planning on trying to impact that more by adding more homes. No, that won't work. It's just dangerous. We've had people try to park their own cars and then people come down. We've had 5 accidents and destroyed 5 neighbors' cars because everybody's parking. They move into a rental. There's 3 families in the rentals. And when we bought the home, it was a single-family residential neighborhood. And now you're planning, and you've never been Shirley Drive. You wouldn't even know you probably wouldn't even get down it. And it's not fair to the people that have been there forever to change something that was designated originally for single-family homes, not rentals with 3 families in them and 8 extra cars. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Enrique Escobar. Oh, well, thank you.
Thank you for allowing the time tonight. I live at 422 Soule. I am Phil Altman, and I am a first-generation Pleasant Hill resident, but my wife is a second generation. We live 11 houses from her parents. The lady who grew up in my house lives 12 houses from me. So we live in a neighborhood where people continue to live generations and generations. I live next door to 500 and 501 Soule Avenue, 2 of the properties you all have deemed to be rezoned to this multifamily. I'm not sure if you took into account the creeks and the flood. All of Soule Avenue actually drains to my property and turns and goes left through my yard. All of Beatrice drains behind 501 and 500 Soule. So I don't know how you could make that multifamily housing on a street that's barely can handle 1 car most of the time, because if 2 people park on each side, I don't even know how the fire trucks get through half the time. I would also like to emphasize that I did look last Thursday when I heard about this for the very first time, and this was not posted on the city's website. I didn't see it posted till this weekend, and it was a 1,500-page document that I was scrambling to go through over the weekend to find out what impacts it would have on me and my family and our neighborhood. Part of the document does say that this shall not impact a neighborhood. This would severely impact our neighborhood. There's plenty of vacant space around Pleasant Hill that was already mentioned earlier that should be considered for rezoning, Orchard Supply Hardware being one of them. I would also like to oppose section 2CLV1-6. The setbacks should be more than 10 feet. The cap height should be less than 35 feet or capped at 35 feet. Section KIIH 2.2, the setback for front yards to houses should stay at 20 feet. That's part of what makes our neighborhood special. And I think that was all my points. So just really take into consideration the floodplains as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa Rumpf and Dan Frankie and Robert Toso. Lisa Rumpf, Dan Frankie, Dan Frank. Thank you.
Hi there. Thanks for having me. Thanks for listening. So I live at the end of Soule, right? I was born and raised in Pleasant Hill. My mother still lives in Poets Corner. I think many of us in this room who live in Poets Corner can say that Poets Corner is probably the crown jewel of really the area. It's a beautiful place. I was born there. I love Poets Corner. I moved to Gregor Gardens, bought the house there. Hunted for 6 years to find a house in Pleasant Hill, in Poets Corner, because that's where I wanted to live. We bought that house. We have put over $500,000 into that house in improvements over the past 5 years. And then this comes out and says that my house is going to be reclassified and possibly torn down. We're not done remodeling, right? But my wife and I are freaked out that, do we just stop now? What do we do, right? My house, then my next door neighbors, all of those on Roberta, all of those on Beatrice are all impacted by this. They have big brown marks on their quadrant 3 over here that is going to turn it into multifamily homes. I back up to that creek. There are egrets in that creek. There are coyotes that run through that creek. There are turtles in the creek. There's tons of wildlife running through that creek. As Phil, who was just up here, my next door neighbor, his house floods. I have seen that back creek lapping at my fence in the backyard. And you guys are talking about putting multifamily homes covering all the area that's flood control home over there. we will all be impacted by the floods that will come through here. We already pay a significant amount of money for flood insurance. The flood insurance is probably going to go up more because now we're more at risk. I implore you to relook, as you've done with Babbitt Court. I don't know how Babbitt Court got removed, but reconsider the end of Soule, the end of Roberta, the end of Beatrice, because those houses are part of the crown jewel here. We bought into these houses because we love them. We are part of Poets Corner, right? We want to remain part of Poets Corner, not at risk of our houses being demolished. I have a lot more to say, but thank you for listening.
Thank you.
You just called me before. My name is Lisa Rumpf. I live on Hardy
Oh, great.
Circle.
Thank you.
And I just want to underscore comments that have already been made and implore you to please consider not connecting Soule and Beatrice to Cleveland and opening up Poets Corner. Yes, it's the crown jewel of Pleasant Hill. The closed circles are part of its charm. Our kids, our grandkids, elderly, we all walk through and those streets are very narrow. So it was a real concern of what must be done in the future to allow for extra traffic, like impacting the front yards and what have you. So please consider that very carefully. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any comments? We have to, the comments for the overflow.
Yes, we have about 11.
11. Let's do this. Let's take our break now and we'll get those comments coming up here and then we'll resume after that. So let's take a 10-minute break. Let's be back at 8:25.
Opportunity for us to ask questions from staff about this after the public comment to clarify what we're hearing. I'm worried that people are leaving feeling like
sure
they didn't get a response, you know, and it's not that I want to respond so much as to it feels like there's a lot of misunderstanding. And no, there's no. Yeah. There's and I just I'm seeing people. And because we are saying, you know, we can't have it a certain be as an opportunity to discuss this now and this. That's what I said. Saying, please speak and then
yeah, that's fine. We can do it. Because they're going with this moving. I think I said we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yes, you get the rest of them after you do it.
PUD 410 issue.
I found a date.
I asked, I wanted to ask Peter this question so he can go on the record. I asked her when that PUD was allowed. 35 years. It's been just, and there are two.
Yeah.
So.
Hey.
Yeah.
You're so good
at this. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, yeah, I can say it's. Yeah. But. Well,
You just start finding your seats every convene here momentarily. Yeah. You can't. She's in your chair. Where did those go? It's Santa, but that's probably inappropriate. I thought I lost common. Oh, shit. They can. There'll be a process. GBP is pricing. 13 more. On or about. You're doing a great job, people. Can my mic get louder, please? What we're doing in the theater. Not using the gavel. I refuse to use the gavel. Please try to find your seat or a seat. Have we stopped recording or are we? Okay. I know I can't either. It is on. I've got a green light.
I've got a green light.
Let me know when we're recording again. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. I think my mic is muted. It's on. I'm on. No, my green light's good. They just don't want me to talk. Okay, huh? Is it working now? No, no. I can't tell.
It is working.
I don't have a monitor.
If we could quiet down, we're going to start again.
I need to start singing. Freebird. Okay, thank you. We are going to resume the planning commission meeting now, but I wanted to get back to public comment, but before we did that, I wanted to explain just something for those of you who have been here before, because I know some of you have been asking some questions when you come up to the lectern. The nature of this process and how it works is that the time for public comment is public comment only. You're absolutely free to ask a question. Unfortunately, we're not able to answer by how this structure works. What happens when you do that is we'll write it down and we're going to come back to it during our discussion. But just know that if you ask us a question, we can't get into a discussion because we want to give you the time. That's why is we all have a limited time here and we want to give you as much time to speak as we can. So if you have a question or something like that, please ask it. We want to know what your questions are. We're writing them down up here. And when we get to the discussion portion, we'll be raising them amongst ourselves to talk about it. So just be aware that those of you who have come up and asked questions about eminent domain or some other things like that. We're going to talk about them, and we do want to talk about them so that you guys can know what the situation is with that. So thank you for your patience in that. And then we're getting into the comments now from the people in the overflow. I'm just going to keep, I think a number of you may have moved up here. So I'm just going to keep calling out 3 at a time so that the speakers can come, and we're going to get through this. So thank you guys. You're doing a great job. I'm just, one of the wonderful things about Pleasant Hill are the people, and I'm just really proud of how you guys are talking about this and treating each other. This is really great. So just I'm proud of everybody here. So with that, Eric Pope, Regina Punt, and Michael Ray.
First after the break, right?
Yep.
So I'm Eric Pope of 510 Beatrice. First of all, I'd like to thank you for us to have this opportunity to share our concerns about this rezoning ordinance. I would also like to thank my neighbors and fellow citizens of Pleasant Hill for referencing 510 Beatrice as part of the rezoning ordinance. I would also like to ask the consultant, Mr. Gibbons, if you've ever walked down or have ever spent any time in front of 510 Beatrice or any of the aforementioned residences on Soule, and you might get an understanding of why the people are emotional about this process and about the fact that a lot of us didn't know that we had actually been rezoned. For over 13 years, we heard nothing about changing the use of our property. We moved in 22 years ago, 23 years ago now. And at the beginning, there was constant discussion of redevelopment agencies taking our property through eminent domain, and also for using, in the case of flood control basins, if those plans had been adopted. They were canceled, didn't happen. I would just like to mention also that a lot of people have mentioned the impacts of flooding. I have the impacts flooding as a result of redevelopment. I have an easement on the west side of my property. That easement contains an old creek channel that was covered up years ago by the development of then the Pleasant Hill High School and now Pleasant Hill Middle. Since the redevelopment of the county educational facility and the adjacent library, when we have heavy rains, within 24 hours, that flows, and it flows red. There is only one place that red could be coming from, and that is from the baseball diamonds at Pleasant Oak Parks. So just a consideration for that we already see that. Before the redevelopment of the County Educational Center, that never happened. It never changed color to red. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi, my name is Regina Punt, and I am over a 20-year citizen of Pleasant Hill, second generation by my husband, first generation through his mother. We have lived here, like I said, over 20 years, and we live on Charles Avenue. At the end of Charles Avenue, there's a proposed multi-use or multi-development proposed, and my proposal is that be removed entirely. At the end of Charles Avenue and Gregory Lane, there have been multiple accidents due to traffic. We back up to the two schools, Sequoia Elementary and Sequoia Middle School, and we have entrances to the back gates at the end of our street at Charles Avenue and Jackson. And there is so much traffic now that I can foresee that if there is multi-use buildings, commercial buildings with residential at the bottom, it would be even more so traffic, even more so accidents, even more so congestion. It's now a safety hazard as it is. They put a light at Eleonora and Gregory to, kind of reduce that traffic and those accidents, and it's still happening. There are no bike lanes. There's multiple children, multiple people traveling via bike on Gregory, And I'm not sure if the plan is to reduce that down to a one-way each way street to make up for this commercial area that you're wanting to put in, but it's just not the place for it. Like many people have said, let's use our existing empty buildings for this purpose. That way we can remain commercial in those areas and remain residential in our current areas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Michael Ray. I live in the East Vivian side, Sherman Oaks area. I came here with some questions to ask, but realize they cannot be answered at this time. One of them being, what should we expect to see in our area in the next 5 to 10 years if it does get moved from single family to mixed use? Two, how do we expect to provide parking or traffic control for now commercial areas in the middle of some single family homes? With potential commercial sites, will the city provide walkways or roads for our children to get to school safely? And will there be any height restrictions to those buildings? In short, I guess I just want to say that it just does not seem practical to change an existing residential neighborhood into mixed use. I do believe that time should be spent rezoning the older strip mall areas and allowing more housing on the Contra Costa Boulevard area. That's pretty much everything else was answered, so thank you very much.
Thank you. David Sanderson, Sarah Kelly, and Mar Gusnigaffo. I'm very sorry.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I just want to start by saying until tonight, we've had a complete failure to communicate. I live in 1919 Marta Drive, Pleasant Hill. I've been in Pleasant Hill since 1973. My neighbors, my families and friends are multi-generational. Families live down the street from each other. And this type of development or this type of change has been decided by people that don't live in that community, that neighborhood. I think there's been a failure to engage the people that are impacted by this. The message wasn't received. Nobody that I know has been part of that process. I feel like there's been a missed opportunity in the development of the CarMax and the floor and decor area. That could have been a huge mixed commercial residential area. I'm sure there's reasons it didn't happen, but I think it would have affected a lot less people than this current plan will. And I agree with everybody else that there is plenty of other areas of Pleasant Hill that are already more commercial, that are underutilized, that should be considered for redevelopment. My neighborhood has two ways in. We already have problems with speeding people through people speeding through the neighborhood, limited parking. We have lots of young children in there that it's already unsafe sometimes, and adding more traffic is only going to make it more unsafe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, committee members. My name is Sarah Kelly, and I live in the East Vivian neighborhood. First, I want to thank everyone on the committee and staff who have taken the time to answer my questions about the proposed rezoning of our area. Your responses have helped me better understand the Pleasant Hill General Plan and the reasoning behind the zoning changes. I recognize that you're in a difficult position. You've been tasked with accommodating an additional 1,800 housing units in Pleasant Hill, a significant and challenging responsibility. I also appreciate that you've worked with consultants and experts to find the best approach and that you've made an effort to focus on areas that are less densely occupied. That said, my entire neighborhood is being proposed for rezoning to mixed use, and I'm here to respectfully ask if you would reconsider revisiting that decision. Is it possible to meet the state mandated housing requirements without rezoning the entire East Vivian neighborhood? I understand the logic of focusing development along Contra Costa Corridor, but I hope there's still room to explore alternatives that wouldn't involve such a sweeping change to our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Margot Shengxiao, and I'm a resident at 1725 Shirley Drive. And I was shocked to see the notice come in the mail. That was the first time I've heard ever of the rezoning of some of the single-family properties, especially in Gregory Garden, which I moved in 13 years ago, and it's multi-generational. We are the second owners of the property that I live on now, and I back into Contra Costa. And I was surprised why half the street is rezoned mixed use. It doesn't make sense to me. I was already upset with the new modified intersection at Taylor and Contra Costa. The Shirley Drive is a freeway. I think more traffic is going there now because people don't like that intersection. And I can't even back out of my driveway without getting hit. There's a couple of accidents there, and I think a lot of cars are getting sideswiped. So I don't even park my car on the street. And with the people that walk there, it's the feeder street that comes from all the cross streets in Gregory Garden. I think it'll lose its charm. I moved there because of its charm, and people stay long, multi-generational. And the home that I live here is I was looking to do a remodel. Now I'm questioning about the impact on taxes, property taxes. Is that going to change? Is there eminent domain? That's a possibility in a couple of years, where half of Shirley Drive will it's mixed use. I don't see that making sense for half of Shirley Drive. I think there's other properties in Pleasant Hill that could be considered versus taking half of Shirley Drive. I think the residents across the street will probably oppose as well. So I hope you can reconsider Shirley Drive and remove it from the rezoning so that Gregory Garden can keep its charm and the feeder streets that lead into Shirley Drive won't be approaching a multi or mixed use development. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeffrey Peterson, Denise Berry, and Katya Senf. Jeffrey Peterson.
I apologize for the delay. It's a little hard to hear you guys in the back right here, whereas in the overflow room, the speaker is great. Just to let you know. My name is Jeff Peterson. My property is on Oak Park Boulevard. It's one of the ones that's being proposed for the rezoning. I've kind of shortened my remarks to make them brief because or more brief because it's getting kind of late. I guess I would say that I'm opposed to the rezoning plan. Mainly because it seems to me that it's going to reverse economically beneficial aspects of SB 9, which the state legislature approved, 3 years ago? Let's see. The reason that what I look at, longtime resident Pleasant Hill, I think if you did the rezoning, I think you would lose the benefit of the, what's it called, the ministerial approval process that SB 9 provides. And I look at the properties like the old Black Angus site and the restaurant to the south of that. I don't know if it was called Savoy or what. That's been empty for years. The gas station site down the street from me near Safeway. It's kind of a bummer to have all these empty lots, and it seems like if you go through this rezoning, you're going to open yourself up to that. That's it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Denise Berry. Katya Senf. Nope. Okay, Eric Singen, Josephine Greer, and Rebecca Hagan. We're waiting for them to come up. if they are. If you're here, it's your time.
Good evening. My name is Josephine Greer, and I've been a homeowner on East Vivian Drive since 2011. I'm here to strongly oppose the proposed rezoning and Title 18 amendment that would affect intact neighborhoods like mine. I chose this area, moving from San Francisco, because it's quiet. Large lots, family yards, front and backyards are large, and access to Contra Costa Boulevard. Rezoning for high density or commercial use would fundamentally change the character, worsen traffic, and overburden infrastructure. I have several questions that I'd like you to address, especially when you make this decision tonight. How does rezoning align with the 2040 General Plan's goals of smart growth and neighborhood preservation? What findings justify rezoning? Have there been actual changes or demonstrated need? How will increased density affect traffic, public services, and adjacent properties? Was the Housing Accountability Act or Builder's Remedy considered? Why weren't residents informed in 2020 that neighborhoods like East Vivian would be affected? What specific maps and materials were shared with the public during the 2020 vote? And why weren't established neighborhoods left out? Does the city believe that 2020 notice process met legal standards under PHMC Chapter 18.125? There are other better alternatives, as you already heard. Focused growth in underused commercial areas such as Contra Costa Boulevard, Gregory Lane, and near Sun Valley Mall, not in stable residential neighborhoods. Also use phased or site-specific zoning instead of sweeping changes. Preserve neighborhoods like East Vivian Drive, which already reflect Pleasant Hill's values and livability goals. My long-term concerns. While I understand that there's no development plans today, there's no developer technically, the fact that my neighborhood isn't included in this general plan creates long-term uncertainty. I respectfully ask that you, the planning committee, amend the general plan to exclude intact neighborhoods like mine so that families can have peace of mind now, not wait for or fear that something might happen 5, 10, or even 20 years from now. It's easy to say change won't happen for decades, but no one can predict what's going to happen in 2 years from now. Many of us have children. Like mine, when I moved in 2011, and then my neighbor moved in, my son was 5. He's now 15, starting high school. 4 years from now, he's going to graduate high school, and potentially another 4 years from there, he's going to leave home, go to college, and come back. My point is, time flies. Even though we keep hearing messages that nothing will change for decades or it's going to be 5, 10, 20 years from now, people come back to Pleasant Hill because this is home, a place where we've worked so hard to build and to protect. And in closing, please halt and amend East Vivian neighborhoods and neighborhoods like mine, but instead refocus on growth, on appropriate corridors that everyone else has mentioned, and engage with the community like you are doing today before altering places that we already call home, especially for multi-generational families that I was hoping to build just like everyone else here who's already done that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Okay,
Yeah.
Eric or Rebecca? Okay, great.
Hello, committee and my neighbors. I am a parent in the Pleasant Hill area, in Poets Corner specifically. Sorry for the breath. I just came back here when I heard my name called. I was putting my daughter to sleep because I am a concerned parent who is going to, who has a child at Sequoia. As also an owner, like many of the people who are here,
I do have concerns with the plan, seeing how I've been here only 3 years, which is very little compared to some of the generational families that are here. And I do consider myself pretty aware of news and local happenings, but for some reason, the public notices that went out for this plan, I had no idea about it. I actually had to learn about it via local news on some kind of episode. So my question is specifically on the presentation y'all gave for page 48 of the zoning map update, or specifically quadrant C, where it's specified incorrect zoning of the multifamily MFM to R10. My question is, if that correction has been made and other immediate areas surrounding the same area are adjacent to that, have they also gone through a quality review similar to this one? Because if this specific quadrant off of Beatrice, I believe, was incorrect, I would like to know some documentation or explanation as to why this site with this specific area was also corrected, or a correction was made. If that correction was made for this area, then why it was the other areas, have they gone through a quality check as well? Again, I am aligned and agree with some of my neighbors in the Poets Corner area, and wish that I don't agree with this plan, which I wish it would, for the neighbors and myself, we would be more aligned as to what's going on. Thank you, and that's my time.
Thank you. Jean Refkin, Deanna Rabach, and Samantha Roberts.
My name's Gene Refkin. I live on Beatrice Road. I don't think this is a NIMBY problem. We're not talking about not in my backyard. And I think what people haven't mentioned too much is about safety, and in particular, my own safety. I've bought my home. We moved here in 1996. I'm a lot older now. I've lost hearing in one ear. I'm not the only one on my block that's done that. And I'm sure there's a lot of other older people who are harder hearing. The street is really narrow. There's no sidewalks. There's no streetlights. Sometimes I can hear a car coming. I have no sense of direction. Sometimes I hear a car, but I have no idea where it's coming from. If I'm lucky, it's in front of me. But if it's in back of me, it could be 20 feet away. It could be all the way up on Patterson. Cars are real quiet now. Sometimes I don't hear them. I have been honked at to get out of the way. Going to say something about this. I wasn't even going to do this tonight. The idea that, oh, well, we do have people come down the street driving too fast, and they don't live in the neighborhood. They don't know better. But if you all put a whole lot more people in our neighborhood with cars, rushing to get to work, rushing to get to school, I think it would become much more dangerous. And the idea that you're even thinking about this, I think is shameful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Hi, my name is Dina Rabach, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my husband, who's at home with our children. As longtime Pleasant Hill residents, homeowners, and community participants, we strongly oppose the proposed rezoning of our home and neighboring properties from single-family to a mixed-use building. Our home at 23 Celia Drive sits in Sherman Oaks, also known as Gregory Gardens, one of the most established neighborhoods in the city. This proposal threatens not just the integrity of our home and livelihood, but the safety, trust, and character of our entire community. We chose to buy our home in Pleasant Hill and raise our children in this neighborhood because of the safety, quaintness, location, and charm. The rezone proposal of our neighborhood threatens the following: traffic and safety impacts. The addition of multifamily, residential, and commercial units under the proposed rezoning would significantly increase traffic in our neighborhood. The surge in volume would funnel through narrow residential streets that were never designed to handle such density. These roads are not just thoroughfares. There where children play, families walk, and neighbors gather. Increasing traffic in the family-oriented walk-to-school neighborhoods would create unsafe conditions for current residents, particularly for children and pedestrians. Number 2, personal investment and financial impact. Over the past 3 years, my family has invested several hundred thousands of dollars into architectural redesign and improvements of our home. The addition was completed in full compliance with all the current rezoning regulations and ease requirements for single-family residents. A zoning change at this point would impose significant financial harm on us. The introduction of multi-use residential or commercial developments on neighboring lots would substantially reduce the value of our property. Number 3, overcrowded schools is a growing concern. Overcrowding in public schools is a serious issue affecting the quality of education for millions of students across the country. The rezoning proposal will only exacerbate the current overcrowding in public schools, which has been a growing concern over the last several years. Number 4, community and social dynamic impacts. One of the most profound concerns with the proposed rezoning is the disruption it would cause of the strong sense of community that has long defined our single-family neighborhood. Over the years, residents have built lasting relationships rooted in shared values, mutual respect, and a stable, familiar environment. Rezoning for multi-use, multifamily, and commercial developments would alter this dynamic. Number 5, current infrastructure and environmental risk. Our existing sewer infrastructure is not designed to support medium-density multi-use developments. The proposed rezoning would place significant additional strain on already limited systems, requiring careful planning, engineering upgrades, and substantial investment to ensure adequate capacity. Number 6, environmental considerations. A key point of opposition, sorry, I'm talking fast. A key point of opposition to the proposed rezoning is a significant environmental impact that mixed-use development would bring. Increasing housing density would inevitably reduce green space and tree cover, replacing natural areas with buildings, pavement, and other impervious surfaces. This not only contributes to the urban heat island effect, but also increases stormwater runoff, which can overwhelm drainage systems and degrade water quality. Number 7, already spoken about, eminent domain concerns. If the primary goal is to meet the housing unit targets outlined in the housing element, why rezone currently occupied single-family properties? This quiet inclusion of these homes in the Sherman Acres area raises serious concern about the transparency and suggests the possibility of a broader plan, one that could ultimately involve the use of eminent domain to make way of high-density development. Number 8, already spoken about as well, better alternatives exist. This proposal prioritizes overdevelopment in one of Pleasant Hill's most cherished communities instead of exploring smart community building alternatives. Final thoughts. This proposal does not build community. It fractures it. We urge the city to reconsider this proposal, not only for the safety and future of our homes, but for the integrity of Pleasant Hill. Thank you.
Thank you. Samantha?
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Thank you so much for hearing all of us and for all the information you provided tonight. My name is Samantha Roberts. I live on Maureen Lane, and I don't know if we've really looked at Maureen Lane, but it dead ends into a court. So it does back to Gregory, but we are not on Gregory facing. So I'm here to oppose the rezoning of 630, 631, 634, and 635 Maureen Lane from single family to mixed use. These homes are, as I mentioned, located on a closed court, and our interior facing properties, our lives face and function in that court. When you look up the billion pages in that link that was sent, it says mixed use, like a coffee shop or a grocery store. After putting 11 offers in to buy my first home in Pleasant Hill, it took 11. I did not buy in a court so that I could live next to a coffee shop or a grocery store. I have 2 little babies now, and you can ask some of my neighbors that are here. We live in that court. We are always in that court. And I really wonder if we were looking at a map and seeing that these aren't Gregory Lane homes. This is inside of Gregory Gardens, a block from Strandwood Elementary, which is a mostly unfenced elementary school. I chose this neighborhood so that I could live in a court, which does come with a price tag. When you buy in a court, it feels like a bit of a bait and switch, moving that to a mixed use property. And I also want to just clarify that these 1,080 parcels, as we're calling them, they're people's homes. That's why I go to work every day. It's why I drained my bank account to buy my first home in Pleasant Hill. My dad grew up on Eloise, a block away from where I now live. This community was sought after as a single family place to raise my family. Safety is a big concern. And I want to continue to raise my family in this neighborhood. I don't want to wonder if my neighbor might sell out and it might become a Pete's next door. That's a really unsettling feeling to have. And I just really implore you all to look at where these markers are and where these areas that you've painted different colors are, because it really affects each of us in different locations. We all just want to still call this place home and not watch it change from underneath us. So thank you.
Thank you. Carol? Nope. Thank you. And Dom? Oh, Carol, there you are.
Thank you for hearing me tonight. My name is Carol Reed. I've been a 45-year resident of Pleasant Hill, and I have more questions than comments. So it seems that maybe the time for input to this was when the general plan was being developed, because what I heard is that we're now stuck with the zoning having to match what's in the general plan. So my question is, and I know you do this, answer them during the discussion. My question is, okay, what's our recourse? How do we amend the general plan to help all the people who have been voicing their opposition tonight? Because we can't change the zoning without being in all kinds of conflict with the state. So that's one of my questions. The other question is that I did look through parts of the general plan because I live on two creeks that do flood. I'm not part of the rezoning part of the map, but some of building in a floodplain seems in contradiction to chapter 9, page 9-16, chart number HS5 in the general plan that talks about building in a floodplain. So it seems that some of the proposed zoning in a floodplain is contradictory to the general plan's objectives. And my last question is, how does all this rezoning in the general plan fit with the city's floodplain management plan and with FEMA's community rating system for flood management? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dom Legaspi?
Hello, I'm going to refer to my notes. I'm Dom Legaspi. I live at 520 Beatrice Road. I am in the closest house to the west bank of Grayson Creek in the proposed rezoning. So there's so many reasons why this rezoning, at least for our area and for all the areas, is a bad idea, but I'm going to talk about water. Water does not care. There's a reason why there's a sandbag station every year very close to my home. If you look at our area, the Beatrice Cleveland area, from above, it just looks like it's this open land and, oh, hey, that would be perfect. Get a little closer because there's a reason why all that land is vacant. It used to be homes. There was a flood in the 70s. We're in a 100-year flood zone. And do the math on that. Because those homes are all gone. They were acquired by the flood control district in the mid to late 70s. So, you know, the housing element says that flooding any development in that area can just be mitigated. Okay, well, great. The water has to go somewhere. So it's great that it's mitigated for the developed area. But when you develop like the library, the David on project on Oak Park, like that water had to go somewhere, and we get to see it every year. There was a flood on Cleveland and Astrid a couple years ago, New Year's Day. A woman had to be rescued from her car by somebody in a kayak. So, look, it's clear what you're opening the door to by approving a rezoning of existing homes as well as that surrounding open land. It's pretty transparent, right? The houses at the end of Beatrice, the houses at the end of Soul, I don't know how you pronounce it. Those could easily just be, you can say you're not going to eminent domain. You can say that now. It could happen down in the future, right? So allow it to be developed. You're playing with fire. Hopefully you have enough water to put it out.
Thank you. Cindy Walker Sales.
Collapse. Just leave me there. Be better off. Cindy Walker Sales. I live at 1925 Marta Drive. It's part of Sherman Acres West. I'm a second generation Pleasant Hill for 59 years. I've watched many changes to Pleasant Hill over these years. I got engaged at the old Pleasant Hill Drive-In, for those of you who remember it. I didn't get married though. When I graduated from high school, all I could think of was getting the heck out of Pleasant Hill. This is the only place I had ever been. However, when I was able to buy a single family home, guess where I bought it? All I could think of was buying my home in Pleasant Hill, where my childhood dreams were. And I wanted to live here for the rest of my life. We bought our home 27 years ago. I'm now retired and living on a fixed income with plans to live here till I die or can't stay in my house due to health. I don't understand what the end game is for changing our entire neighborhood to mixed use. Was our neighborhood specifically listed in the general plan or just 1,080 parcels? Our neighborhood could not be developed into mixed use as it exists. The streets are too small. Somebody mentioned the sewer system can't handle it. We don't have sidewalks. There's only 2 ways in and out of our neighborhood. That would have to be changed. So is the plan to eminent domain our entire neighborhood? I mean, is that the end game? Additionally, on this subject, my mom lives off of Boyd Road and has been having flooding issues for as long as I can remember. Adding more houses upstream is going to cause more flooding. So thank you for listening to me. I don't understand what this is all about.
Thank you.
Do we have any more?
Nope, that's it. So with that, I'm going to close public comment. Thank you all for everything that you've brought forward and said. And now we are going to begin the committee discussion. This is where we get to talk about the things that we've seen in our review and some of the things that you've brought up. So where would we like to start on the committee discussion?
Through chair.
I'm sorry?
Do you want to go?
Yeah,
You
Commissioner.
can
go,
Commissioner Kaufman. Well, no, I was just thinking that there are some questions that were brought up. So maybe we start with.
Yes.
Yeah, some of the questions if staff
So-
maybe want to answer some of them.
I think I've got several clarifying questions for probably staff and everyone else can jump in. To the parcels between Beatrice and Cleveland, I believe that's an existing PUD 410. I believe there's existing uses that PUD 410 allows for. And my understanding is that the current zoning map change would align the new zoning district. We're getting rid of a PUD and replacing it with functionally the same thing that's been around since before I was here. Is that correct?
So those properties off Cleveland and Beatrice and Soule that we've been talking about, those are in a PUD 410. PUD 410 does not contain any development standards. It does not contain any land use criteria. There's essentially nothing to it besides just a document stating it's in PUD 410. And so when we review projects currently today, because there's no development standards to review against, we look then towards what the general plan designation is. And the general plan designation for many of these sites, except for that Babette Court, which we talked about, has been multifamily medium since at least 1990. And so when we review projects, we then turn to our multifamily medium zoning district to look at applicable standards. And so this proposal is simply to clean up that disconnect between a PUD that does not have any development standards or regulations, where we already default to the medium density multifamily, and just simply rezone it to multifamily medium density. The Babette Court area in the general plan is already single family medium density, which is why it would then just be rezoned to the R10 because that's the corresponding zone.
So say nothing happened today and a developer had proposed a project already to City Hall under that old PUD requirement. The density would be dictated by the general plan with no land use control at the zoning level.
The density would be dictated by the multifamily medium. We would also look at the multifamily medium zoning district for setbacks, building heights.
There's no objective design standards currently because of the funkiness of the way that the zoning code has been for those parcels for 30 years.
Correct, yeah.
So functionally, aside from cleaning up what already exists there, what has changed?
Nothing will change.
Thank you.
Any other questions on that item?
Just on that, so just to clarify, because I had a little bit of trouble hearing all of that, is that this zoning on that area, refer to that brown area on the map, which is basically along Cleveland Road, east and west, to the west and straddling the creek, that has had this zoning on it since the 1990s. Is that correct?
The general plan designation since the 1990s.
Plan designation has been there. So this really is not, as Commissioner Weiler was saying, it's not really a change in anything that is previously existing. It's basically being more clear, I hate to use this next word, more transparent about what was already in place since the 1990s. So that's what's happening here. There is no zoning change, or there's no land use change. Land use designation change is probably the way to say it. So how that all got started, I'm not sure, because quite frankly, I have to tell you as we go forward with this discussion, there's been so much misinformation around what, this evening, that it's hard to even know where to start to correct it. But I'm thanking Commissioner Weiler for at least setting the base information, which is that nothing secretive has happened here. As the general plan process has gone through, there have been multiple notices, through every way that the city tries to communicate with citizens. But I can tell you from many years of experience, no matter how hard, they try, we end up with situations where people say, I just didn't know. So it's, in my experience, almost unavoidable. But just wanted to clear up that first point, which is there hasn't been any great change here. So I don't know. Go ahead.
Can I add one comment to that? There was a mention in some of the public comment that when looking at this particular parcel, that it wasn't included in the housing element and they didn't see it in any of the discussions that resulted in the adopted general plan and housing element for 2023. And the reason for that is that it wasn't changed through that process. So of the updates to the ordinances that we're reviewing today, I at least see two different types. There's this site, which is just a clarifying of what has been the zoning available there for 35 years, and where there's actually been a couple, I think, projects developed as multi-family medium density already, just a couple along Cleveland. And in that time, that's what's happened, but it has been available for that sort of development for 35 years, and we haven't seen it. And it was mentioned that it is, the land on the west side is owned by the flood control district. And I think that's an important piece of information because the right people are in control of it. Let me just leave it at that. So.
I can't remember, maybe this is a question for our consultant. When we propose housing opportunity sites, or when we're telling the state, hey, you told us we have to zone, not build, we have to zone, not build 1,800 units. And we tell the state, hey, we found what we think could satisfy, I think it was 2,400. We tried to overestimate, tried to tell the state, here's what we could potentially zone for. We told the state, we're not going to build this. The city doesn't build housing. Our city's budget is a shoestring. We can't ever do that, let alone the eminent domain concerns. The state significantly cut down what they thought was believable for a number of reasons. I think floodplain may have been one of them. Hillside sites may have been another one. But also, if a site was submitted to the state over multiple rounds of housing element cycles, if they don't see any movement after 2 or 3 cycles, it's out. I don't remember the process because it's been years since I was having these discussions both on general plan and housing, but weren't these sites also previously proposed in other cycles that may have now been kicked out? Or is that why we didn't propose it, or just the state saw nothing would ever happen here?
Commissioner Weiler, these sites by definition, if you have vacant residential sites, those are automatically housing opportunity sites. And so to your point, we didn't have to change anything because they are already multifamily medium, but they were identified in the housing element as potential housing sites because they're zoned residential and they're vacant. And that's prime what the state of California is looking at when they contemplate housing elements. It was in previous housing elements as well, and it continues to be.
They haven't kicked it back yet. I remember there was a discussion.
Well, what happens if you're in multiple iterations of the housing element? They don't kick it out. They essentially say the city can't even stop residential from happening there. It becomes a pure ministerial process, potentially.
So a site,
I shouldn't say that's factual, but that's down the road.
depending on the number of dominoes that fell into place, for instance, if a parcel for whatever reason did not develop after a number of cycles, it could become by right.
It could be, but I think currently if it was in multiple housing elements, it then becomes by default a housing site.
Okay.
Which has a lot of streamlining options if that's the case. I may have misspoke that it's entirely automatic.
There was some interesting questions too that came up this evening, and I'm trying to go through. We have reviewed a lot of projects and gone through improvements required for projects. I mean, I think to a housing site that had 2 houses on it where we required utility improvements that may have been overkill.
Excuse me, Commissioner Weiler, can you speak into the microphone?
Oh, sorry. People were having concerns here on flooding, but all modern developments require no net runoff, and that's something that the city reviews, I believe. I mean, it may seem counterintuitive, but from what I've seen on the developments that go forward because of these no net runoff requirements, isn't the city looking out to ensure that anyone downstream of new developments would have less water than in a previous condition, assuming that it was going to be something that was redeveloped?
That's correct.
You're
Can I hear?
yeah.
So every building permit is reviewed at a case-by-case basis. The applicant needs to submit a drainage plan prepared by a licensed civil engineer that shows with calculations that the historic drainage pattern would not be changed. So if the adjacent lot was receiving 5 gallons of water from the vacant lot, when you build a home there, it will still continue to receive that amount. No difference would be made. And this is regardless of whether or not it's in the floodplain.
Right. Anywhere in the city, which could be a mile from the floodplain, but if the water even eventually went there, everything is being accounted for throughout the entire city, always.
That's correct.
I've gone through a few if someone else wants to ask questions.
I would say if you're going, go.
It was disorganized.
Okay, that was a cry for help. Commissioner Coughlin, did you have some questions?
Yeah, couple of things. I heard a lot today that this is the first time folks hear about it, and I understand the frustration. The reality is both myself and Commissioner Weiler were on the General Plan Advisory Committee, and we've had numerous discussions around housing opportunity sites, maps, and we went back and forth, and folks commented and called in, and it was going on for years, right? Is that fair to say? Yeah, it was roughly 5 years, and it is frustrating that some folks still not hearing or knowing that it's happening, but it wasn't for lack of trying. I mean, we really did have hours upon hours of discussion. And we went back and forth in various maps, and I think the one thing that I want to make clear is that we do too live in Pleasant Hill, and we understand that we want to make this a good community to live in. I have kids as well, and I am relatively close to some of the housing opportunity sites as well. So I understand sort of the need to have this discussion. But I also feel like we've had this discussion for quite some time. And during the housing element, we had a similar situation where there were two sites that folks sort of did not really like. And we had a similar evening. I think we were here probably until 11 or 12. And and ultimately, I think what I'm struggling with is while I hear you, I don't know what the solution is to make everyone happy, other than to say there's going to be an impact somewhere on everyone, including myself. And so I am comfortable with the process that we went through, and I recognize that some of you didn't go through that process. And I think you'll have an opportunity again, if this moves forward, to voice your concerns to City Council, and I suggest you do. But I just want to be clear that we've discussed this at some length, and we didn't just wake up one day and threw a dart at the board and said, this is what we're doing. And then I know there's some questions that I think are unfortunately a little bit misguided. So I'm really hoping that maybe the staff can address some of those questions, things like eminent domain, things like when property be taken away, what happens if there's a developer that's proposing something, sort of things like that I think folks are concerned about. What will happen to my property? I don't know if you want to maybe spend some time going through those, because I think it'll be helpful.
So let's start. Thank you. Let's start going into those two issues right now, because they did both come up quite often. So staff, can you help us understand what the eminent domain process would be risk to the homeowners of that occurring? And there was also this was addressed. There's an FAQ out there that this was addressed in that FAQ. And it's on the website. It's also in the packet. Luckily it's toward the end. So I think it's pages 1437 to 1438. But it's there. And so staff has addressed that in the packet, but can you kind of take us through what the FAQ says in that regarding that?
Well, eminent domain is a process that is essentially was more commonly used when the state of California had redevelopment agencies. Redevelopment agencies went away in, I think, 2010. Because without redevelopment agency, the city loses a lot of its powers to be able to do things such as eminent domain in a way that the city can afford to do eminent domain. Once redevelopment agencies went away, cities, at least to my knowledge, have not heavily relied on eminent domain. Outside of redevelopment agencies that used to use eminent domain, eminent domain can be used for projects that are for the greater public good. For example, if we wanted to build Interstate 680, if there are houses in the way, there's a greater good for Interstate 680. So agencies, government agencies would use eminent domain to purchase property and build infrastructure that's for the greater public good. In this instance, the city does not have the funding to build housing. So even though affordable housing may be a greater good, the city just doesn't have the ability to purchase or eminent and purchase land, and much less to build housing. So we don't have redevelopment agency anymore. We don't have that ability has severely been taken away from cities. And that's fine, but eminent domain is not the intent of this rezoning. I don't recall through the entire general plan process that there was any discussion about eminent domain being used to take properties from people. Quite honestly, single family residences that are currently existing, I believe in our mixed use zoning, we went out of our way to establish that single family residences will remain legal conforming, meaning they wouldn't become non-conforming. So people that are in single family residences can continue to live there, can expand if they desire with no penalty. So those are some things that the city did to ensure that there's as minimal of an impact as possible to those that are currently in single family residences.
Thank you. And then another thing that question was asked about property taxes. Will people's property taxes increase because of this? And you know, the FAQ does read, no, the county assessor confirmed for city that properties are reassessed for tax purposes when there is change in ownership. So this is change. These zoning updates are not going to result in property tax changes just because we're the zoning plan is being updated to meet the general plan.
Chair, the taxes will also change if you remodel or add a building to it, whether you sell it or not. So, but yeah, the zoning won't change that. I just have a question of staff.
Yes.
Troy, we don't build the city. We don't build anything, do we? We don't build housing. We don't build shopping centers. We don't build anything. We approve developers to build things.
Yes, we do not build housing, and we're not in that type of development. The only thing the city builds or repairs are roads, sidewalks, infrastructure, city hall, maintenance building, but not homes.
These areas that are rezoned or planned to be rezoned, if somebody wanted to develop it, they would go to the landowner, property owner, and buy it from them, and then come to you, from the city, and say, hey, I want to put a multifamily unit here, or I want to put a mixed use here, and we would go through the process for a plan.
In basic,
City does not build it.
yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that the people understand, city doesn't build anything. You know? Anyway, thank you.
So one other question that came up, are there current projects that are in mind for any of these areas that are being discussed tonight? Is that a question that we can answer?
There are no projects that are a result of the proposed rezoning.
So those have already been through the planning and approved and everything. Commissioner Weber?
Well, and I guess I just wanted to say that, yeah, the Cleveland are because that PUD allowed multifamily. It's not because of any changes that are occurring through this administrative activity of the updating the ordinances per the general plan. That is from the prior designation for that area. But I did want to, one gentleman asked, who's the builder? Who's the builder? So I do want to make sure that we reiterate, there's nothing planned. There is no builder. This is about long-term future planning for Pleasant Hill, and it is painful and not fun, but it helps us avoid, and someone brought up the conversation of builder's remedy. And in the state of California, if cities do not put together housing elements and general plans that address the housing need that the state has identified for the city, then, and if they don't do it in a timely manner, then builders can build whatever they want, as tall as they want, wherever they want. And that is happening in other cities. It is happening, we're hearing about it, and there's nothing they can do about it. So this is, we're all, my stomach is sick. This is awful. I hear what you guys are saying. This is hard. And it's the better of two evils, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And the state has put us in this position. So we're doing the best we can. We did do the planning back in 2023. So.
Yeah, well, because we don't know, but.
Not appropriate.
So, any other commission discussion?
You know, this is on a probably small level, but I thought there was an interesting comment from one of the people who spoke toward the end here, who lives near the creek.
Mhm.
And I really, I look at those two areas, and I'm talking about now the area, west of Cleveland along the creek. And he basically said something that I didn't know, because I've only been here 22 years, so I'm really a newcomer, which is that those bare areas that show on the aerial to the west of the creek, that they actually contained houses historically, which tells you something about, how viable are those areas for development. I don't have an answer to that, but the fact that houses were taken out of that area would say to me it's highly unlikely anything is going back in. This is when you look at the aerial of this area, it really is quite a revelation, because those properties which belong to the flood control district, are bare for a reason. And I don't see, I think somebody else talked about the cost of development to develop in those areas. I'm not sure anybody ever would. I can't guarantee that. But when I hear that historically houses were there and they're gone, to me, that was a really important piece of information. I can't remember exactly who shared it, but it was an interesting perspective. Personally, I can't guarantee it, but I think there's a very low probability of anything happening there. And I personally wouldn't be worried about it, but I understand the concerns of the people. Yeah. Okay.
I'm sorry, we have had the time for public comment. So.
I'd like to ask
And
a
we hear
question
you on that.
to staff or the consultant in regards to the process of rezoning. I think along the lines of what Commissioner Vavrick has said, there's been a lot of misinformation out there. So I think this is an opportunity that you all are here to voice your concerns, but also to get an understanding from the consultant and staff on what is actually possible to happen. Rezoning doesn't mean tomorrow there's immediate action. There may not be action for 20 years. Those vacant sites, excuse me, I'd like to finish my thought here. Immediate action requires so many different steps. I'm an architect. I've read through all these zoning ordinances. In order to be able to develop anything requires funding, which is not happening in probably the next decade. It requires people wanting this to happen. And it requires, I've already lost my thought, I'm sorry. What I'm trying to say here is I'd like for consultant and staff to help educate all of us on what that process is. Once rezoning happens, what's the next step? Is there even a next step? And I think it comes along the lines of what Commissioner Vavrick is saying, that some of these sites are opportunities. That doesn't mean that a building's going to happen there. So I think that in what all I said, there's a question, and maybe staff and consultant can help elaborate a bit more on process.
So
Development process, rezoning, development process, what happens next?
So if any of these sites were to be rezoned, and this goes for any property in the city holistically, when a property is proposed to be redeveloped, a property owner or a developer, sometimes both, would approach the city with a plan, and they would submit an application to the city for development of a property. And then the city takes that proposal. We review it against all of the applicable development standards, the land use standards, make sure it's an approved use, make sure the setbacks, the building height, all of the required standards that are included in the zoning ordinance tonight, that those are all being met by the project. And then in certain cases, the project then has to go through a public review, or it would go to either Architecture Review Commission, Planning Commission, sometimes City Council. Those are all through public hearings for approval. But all of that has to happen before a project can be approved. And then even after that, there's building permits that have to occur before construction can start.
I would also note that a project that comes before the city, in addition to what Haley noted, there are certain development standards that need to be made, and there's quite honestly infrastructure improvements that they need to satisfy. You can't just place a large building if you don't have adequate water pressure, if you don't have proper sewer, if you don't have, in many cases, we require parking. So the process was simplified by Haley, but there are more technical analysis that developers have to do to ensure that what they want to do would even work on a property. So from that standpoint.
And those things would be at the developer's expense, not city expense. Isn't that
That's correct.
So circling back, rezoning according to this proposed rezoning map doesn't actually result in action. Okay, we have.
I'm sorry, we have given time for public comment. We do need to have this discussion up here. Commissioner Coughlin, I think you had a question or comment?
No, just a comment. Because I wasn't going to say anything, but I kind of feel like I need to now. I think the reality here is that everyone wants single family zoning. And there lies the challenge, because we cannot meet our housing goals that are given to us by the state of California. If you don't have a complying housing element, there is a big issue that we probably cannot resolve. And so a part of this discussion is really thinking about a citywide approach of what we can do and the sites that we have, which are limited. And so we went through this discussion at significant length. And again, I completely understand where folks are coming from. Trust me, I do. But the reality is we can't zone the entire city single family housing. So I'll just end there, because I think we're going to be.
I think we're starting to circle. So any other quick comments?
So for our decision today, the findings we need to make are that the resolution is compliant with the general plan.
Right.
Could you review any other findings that we need to make so that we can be clear on what we're voting?
Sure. And just to clarify, this is all in attachment A of the packet, which is the Planning Commission resolution. And so Section 2 of that resolution speaks to the findings for the zoning ordinance amendment and the rezoning, the zoning map amendments, so that the ordinance is consistent with the policies of the general plan. There are also then some additional, and the resolution then goes into detail of how those findings could be made. There's some additional then findings about that it's consistent with the purpose of the zoning ordinance, which is to protect and promote public health, safety, and general welfare. And then finally, Section 3 of that resolution talks specifically about residential rezoning findings and certain conditions that have to be made when changing the density of residentially zoned properties. And so those are all included in attachment A. And then one more, sorry, as associated with the rezoning, this is a state requirement. We have to make a finding of no net loss, meaning that through the rezoning, we are not essentially losing housing opportunity or housing density. And so the finding then is included in this resolution as well.
So just to be clear on that, what we are voting on is based on these findings is we are making a recommendation to City Council as to the incorporation of these zonings. Based on that recommendation, the City Council will then vote officially whether or not to incorporate. So there is still further time to discuss. There was a question about recourse. There is still further chance to have your voice heard. This is a step in the process. It is not the end of the process. And so I would encourage you guys who have shown up here tonight. This is not the end. But I do think that at this point, I think the staff has done a great job describing the conditions as they exist. I will say that I have, since I've been working on the Planning Commission, I've been absolutely impressed with Troy and Haley and everybody in planning. They do a lot of work to help people understand, to answer questions. Of all the jurisdictions I've ever dealt with, this is the most citizen-friendly that I have been part of. And I am proud to say that, and it's one of the reasons why I'm here. So with that, I'm going to ask if we have a motion.
I would like to move for approval of the resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Pleasant Hill, recommending that the City Council amend Pleasant Hill Municipal Code Title 18, Planning and Land Use in its entirety, and amend the zoning map to include the rezoning of 1,080 parcels throughout the city for consistency with the 2040 General Plan and the 2023 through 2031 housing element.
Okay, may I have a vote? Thank you. May I have a vote, please?
Commissioner Chiang,
Yes.
Commissioner Colfin,
Yes.
Commissioner Mascaro,
Yes.
Commissioner Vavrick,
Yes.
Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
Commissioner Weiler,
Yes.
Chairfield.
Yes. Okay.
Next time we have a mill up whole field, Alex. That you're walk around a bunch of meetings, the whole community. Announcements, yeah, but you don't read the signs. You can tell things in this whole community so we'll know what's going on instead of doing certain people. Sign, baby. Taxpayers here.
Okay, moving on to discussion items. Are there any questions on, yes?
Don't we have annual election of officers?
I know nothing of that.
Keep doing this?
Sorry, new business. I was looking at my handwritten list. Annual election of officers. Would anyone like to nominate a new chair and new vice chair?
I'd like to nominate, David Field as chair.
I'd second that.
Thank you. May I have a vote, please? I guess we take a vote on that.
We need to vote.
I have to, I can't even say anything. I recuse myself.
No. Too late.
If we may, just have a small discussion around that, because I do strongly feel that folks do need to step up a little bit and maybe be a vice chair and chair once in a while. I think it's a great opportunity. Nothing against you as a chair. I'm happy to have you chair as another term.
I am
No
happy
issues
with
whatsoever.
whatever is best for the commission.
Yeah. I mean, I'm 100% fine with you chairing again. That's not an issue, but I do
understand.
think that folks do need to get an experience of chairing.
Well, I was just going to make the other nomination since you asked for chair and vice chair. I'd like to ask if Commissioner Weber would be vice chair and make that nomination.
And I would accept that if someone wished to second it.
I'll second
If
that.
that helps. Okay.
Alex, done.
Thank you for your convincing.
I just need
I can-
Commissioner
one person
Fields' tutelage a little longer because he's very good at this.
Feel like it right now. So should we hold vote?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's vote on chair first.
Okay.
So I had a motion by Commissioner Mascaro, seconded by Commissioner Weber. Commissioner Chiang,
Yes.
Commissioner Colfin.
Yes.
Commissioner Mascaro,
Yes.
Commissioner Vavrick,
Yes.
Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
Commissioner Weiler,
Yes.
Chair Field.
Abstain.
Oh. All right, then for vice chair, we have a motion for Commissioner Weber, and made by Commissioner Vavrick and seconded by Commissioner Mascaro. Commissioner Chiang,
Yes.
Commissioner Colfin.
Yes.
Commissioner Mascaro.
Yes.
Commissioner Vavrick,
Yes.
Commissioner Weber,
Abstain.
Commissioner Weiler,
Yes.
and Chair Field.
Yes. Okay, moving on to discussion items. Item 8, status of current planning projects. Staff will provide the planning commission with a brief status report on active pending issues. Are there any status reports?
Really, the only status report I have is related to the climate action plan. So we did have a second set of workshops on the climate action plan. We got additional input and feedback. Based on that input and feedback, we expect a draft climate action plan to be released later this year. And it will come to the planning commission shortly once it's released. So that's just an FYI for you.
Okay. Staff communications. Any items of general interest that you would like us to?
No, I'm going to roll my first announcement into this announcement.
Okay. Any reports from commissioners on meetings attended at the city's expense?
No.
And announcements and comments from the commissioners?
I have a question of staff, if I may. Troy, do we still have a rule that says if a business goes out that the sign is going to be removed or signage in 60 days or 90 days or something? Because I see a number of businesses that have been gone for like 8 months or a year already, and the signs are still up. And I'm just wondering if anybody.
It sounds vaguely familiar that it's still in place. If there are certain businesses you have concerns about, you can contact us.
I will.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, with that then, it is 9:45 PM and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.